Outstanding. Hey, this is John Chen, and I'm going to be your host today here at the second annual Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Speakers Showcase. My name is John Chen, and I'm one of the 400 National Speakers Association's certified speaking professionals, and I'll be your host all through today. Today, we have 16 speakers for you, and I'm also the founder of a group called API Plus NSA or for the Asian Pacific Islanders at the National Speakers Associations. And one of the key goals for this program is that we really want to elevate the speakers that are here. You know, did you know that it took 50 years, 50, took 50 years for the Asian Pacific Islander group to be formed at National Speakers Associations? We just want to share with you all that, hey, we got a voice and we got some amazing things to say. And all through the day, you're going to learn all different things around there. It can range from AI to how to live your best life to different aspects of Asian Pacific Islander life that are around here. So today I'm going to start off here today, and everyone's going to get 15 minutes. Plus, they're going to get a few minutes where there's a chance for you to give any of these speakers feedback, or that you can connect with them if you're looking for speakers for your upcoming program. So sit back and enjoy and get ready for an amazing day. So today, this talk I'm going to start off with is called is called The Paper Sun. So let me just do me a favor. If you are in the chat, do me a favor, and if you know what a paper, tell me yes or no in the chat if you know what a paper sun is. By the way, if you're watching it on one of our fine social media channels, you can also come around there and say, um, you can chat inside of the social media, yes or no. So let's see. We have two no's and one yes. And I know that Marie knows the story because she was around when I told it. Excellent. Oh, Chris, of course, has heard this story too because him and I have been friends from LA and he's heard this story. So this is a story about immigration. And I'm going to start my own 15-minute timer here and tell you this story. This is a story of, I'm going to share with you what a paper son is. This is a story about immigration. So this is my grandfather. His name was Wang Wa-gun. And he was born in Guangzhou, China, in a very small village. That village is called Lung Tao Wan Village. This is a very small village over here. It meant Dragon Head Turn, where the ridges of the back of the mountains was like a dragon, and where the river turn was the head of that. He was a farmer in this village, and he was very poor. He grew up in a family that farmed mainly rice, and he had a water buffalo as what he used to farm that rice. So with that, stories of a location called Gum San came around. And so if you don't know what Gum San means, it means land of the golden hills. And this is the gold rush. So what I like to call this is the dot-com of the 1800s. People heard, and by the time the stories hit China, said people were picking up gold nuggets off of the streets. And so people wanted to go there from China to America as they thought this was a place where you could get rich. And meanwhile, there was a famine that was happening in China at the same time. And so had even more incentive to go to and want to go to this country known as America, the land of the Golden Hills. Now, there's a little problem with this is that in 1882, there was something passed called the Chinese Exclusion Act. Some people thought there were too many Chinese coming in, for instance, for the railroad jobs, and so they passed a law. And it turns out to be the first law passed against a race, not against a color, but against a race. And they actually were able to pass a law, and it changed the numbers from over 100,000 people coming in, Chinese coming in every year, down to 106 a year. Now, the key around this part is that this Exclusion Act had a loophole. And the loophole says if you are the son of a merchant, a business person, or more well educated, then you were a naturalized citizen. So what happened is that in San Francisco, 1906, there was this earthquake. And it wasn't the earthquake that really messed up the town. It was the next day as people started to light their stoves to cook breakfast the next morning, they found out that the earthquake cracked all the gas lines and then lit the entire town on fire. And not only did it light the entire town on fire, it lit the entire town on fire plus the courthouse. Now, why is the courthouse important? Well, the courthouse contains the birth and death records. And so after the courthouse weathered the fire or was trying to recover from the fire, they came back to all the people in San Francisco and they said, all of our birth certificates were burned up. If you had some kids born in the last, few years, will you please come by the San Francisco courthouse and we'll write you a new birth certificate? Well, the well-meaning and knowledgeable Chinese businessmen at the time came back to the courthouse and they said, "Oh yeah, I got four sons. I got five sons." And so this was one of the ways to potentially get around a law that might have been unfair in some ways. And again, these sons did not exist, but they were able to get birth certificates for them, and that is why they're called paper sons. So what did they do with these papers? Well, they came around and they sold them, they sent them back to China and they were sold on a market back in China. And it cost about $100 a year. And by the time my grandfather went to go buy one, it cost $100 a year for every year old he was. So he's 20 years old. It costs $2,000 of 1912 money. And again, he was poor. So he was also adopted. He was raised by his uncle. And his uncle came in and sold 1/3 of his farm to loan him the money for this. So he spends his $2,000. And what does he get for these $2,000? Well, he gets a third-class ticket on a boat where you ride with the animals in the steerage, right? And you also get a book about your fake family. So this is a book about your family that has all these elements around your family that your new family, the family that you're supposed to have, the one that your birth certificate is written about. And you have to remember all these facts about your new family, and that'll become important here in just a moment. And the third thing that you got here was you get your birth certificate, right, for being a paper son, and then of course you get this third class ticket, and then you get this book about your fake family. Okay, so the trip takes about 3 months. It takes about 3 months from China back to America, and they're heading towards San Francisco. And 3 days before they reach San Francisco, all the Chinese men get up on the top of the boat, all right, and they're on the edge of the boat, and they ceremoniously throw their books off into the ocean, right? Because you can't be caught with that book. Then you would be cheating. And the immigration service, of course, caught wind of this. And again, if you had your book with you, they would immediately deport you. So they had to throw them into the ocean. And now you have to sit here and memorize all this information that you have about your fake family without this book. You got to just sit there and memorize it. So the next piece that comes in is that you would come to a place called Angel Island. So many of you, if you've been to San Francisco, you have been to Alcatraz Island. Right next to it is an island called Angel Island. And if you have not been to this island, please think about visiting that on your next trip because you can see this entire story. This place is still preserved and you can actually walk through this. So this is what the dock would look like. And well, you might think You're Welcome to America might be a great piece that this is your first exposure to the country. But here's what happened for them. They were greeted by men in white lab coats who separated the men from the women for the children, and of course spoke no Chinese. All right? So these are the doctors that are doing quarantine, but you don't know that, and so this was my grandfather's welcome to America. Was that again? He separated the men from the women from the children, and had no idea why that was happening. Coming up next were the conditions inside of this location. The conditions were deplorable. They rioted multiple times for better conditions as this was an island. And so it had subpar food, they ran out of water, and the sanitary conditions often were less than ideal. In a place that would normally hold 100 by US regulations, and this place held 400 or more. So they were overusing all the resources. And so again, the conditions were deplorable at that time. And while you're waiting for that, you're waiting for your time to have an interrogation So the Chinese, out of all the races, there were multiple races that came through in here too. The Russian, Polish, Japanese, insider. But the Chinese had the longest and most difficult of all the interrogations, mainly because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. And so you had to answer all of these questions that you may not even know about your own house. So some of the questions were things like, how many stairs are there from the first to the second floor? How many windows are there from on the west side of the house? You know, which of your relatives likes to come over on Thursday? So if you got any of these answers wrong, and this is an actual transcript of those questions that they had to record every question along the way. If you got any of them wrong, they had that you could be deported with that. And so any people waited anywhere from 2 weeks to 18 months for this interrogation, where again, you had to sit here and memorize all that information during that time. And many people didn't make it. In fact, this was a place of a lot of misery. So one of the ways they dealt with it is that they actually carved poetry in the wall. And to this day, you can actually go there and see these poems still carved in the wall, and many of them have been recovered or have been restored or saved along the way. This is a few lines from one of the poems. As I record the cause of my situation, it really provokes my anger. Sitting here, uselessly delayed for long years and months, I am like a pigeon in a cage. That's what it was like to be here. And out of approximately uh, actually out of 2 million people who passed through Angel Island at this time, about 10% of them, or 200,000 of them, failed the test. And if you know anything about the Asian concept of losing face, many of them did not want to lose face for all the money that they borrowed or things they wanted to do for their families. And so many of them committed suicide rather than go home and face the shame. Now, nobody told my grandfather that this was a life or death game when he started this, but that's what it turned out to. Now, luckily for my grandfather, uh, he got through. He passed his test, and he only knew two English words: Sioux Sun City. And so it's a small city near San Francisco where he had a job waiting for him. He got a chance to work for the Army, and he was paid about $1 a week. And he gave back 75 cents in room and board. But over the course of 5 years of working very, very hard, what of course he found was is that most people don't pick up gold nuggets off the street. Most people make it by using hard work. And so he worked hard over those 5 years. He's very thrifty. And over the course of those 5 years, he saved 40 gold coins and nuggets. And he actually sewed them into a coat so that people wouldn't rob him. And now he takes his next big risk inside of this adventure. And that next big risk is where he goes and he leaves America, right? After all this work to get in, he takes the risk to go back and leave America, and he goes back to the village he goes back to his home village, and he gets a village matchmaker to get his wife, which becomes our grandmother. That's a Mei Lu Jin. And this is their actual birth certificate. And with that birth certificate, one of the key parts is because he now has a naturalized citizen certificate. He gets a first class ticket and he has his marriage certificate. My grandmother gets to bypass all that immigration and Angel Island system because now she is coming in as a legal citizen. So the key here is they got married, and they raised 5 kids with the equivalent of about a third grade US education. And they had multiple businesses. They worked as a gardener. He also eventually owned a grocery store and became a property owner. What's one thing that my mom remembers was writing the invoices out for the businesses as a small child. So all of the kids there helped out with that. So they were able to work hard and get all 5 kids to graduate college. And there are 2 PhDs, and of course, one of them is my mother. And so all 5 of them have become very successful in all the things that they've done, all because, their father, my grandfather, who is a paper son, took a risk and tried to look for and find out how could he create a better life. So now you know the story of a paper son. This is the actual certificate that he received when he finally passed his immigration test. This is the thing that allows him to come into America. And over the course of time, again, he had two houses. And while he's no longer with us, his two houses are still sending money back to projects and people in various places, including China, where they're helping him. And even in the village that he grew up, much of the money that he made helped to create a senior citizen center. It helped sponsor one of the top dragon dance teams. It helped to create a hospital, and it helped create a kindergarten that we actually got a chance to visit, that my kids got to visit. So my hope to you is that now you've heard a story of immigration, and now you know what a paper son is. And so do me a favor, if you're here in the chat, take a moment and see if you can answer these questions. Where do you come from? How did you get here? And most importantly, who do you have to thank that you're here? My name is John Chen, and I hope you enjoyed this opening session here at the Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Speaker Showcase. And all through the day, if you like any one of these speakers, one of the greatest things that you can do now is take out your phone and you can scan this QR code, or if you are here with us in Zoom, let's see, I got a chat for you here. I do believe I have a chat for you here. Oh, okay, great. So thank you so much. Let me give you a link here. And with that link, what you can do is you can scan this QR code, or you can give this link here. I'm going to give you here in just a second. There we go. I got it. And you can give me or any of the speakers today any feedback for that. If there's a way that if you want to contact one of these other speakers with this, when you fill out this form here, that you'll get a chance to be able to, I'll share that information back with that speaker, and they'll have that opportunity to contact you back if they'd like a little more information about each of your talks. So I'll leave this up here, and thank you for this. And again, for all the other speakers, I do have a code for you today. And so just so you know that I'll have that information for you as we go along in today. I've got a few chats in here too. I got Natsu says, what an amazing story. Kathleen said, such a wonderful story. Thank you again for sharing. What is a great way to begin. So again, this is one of the key aspects we're looking for and that you're going to experience today. We want you to hear voices. We want you to hear stories or information that you haven't heard before. We really want you to learn something from today, right? And ideally, if you are looking for a speaker who really embodies, something that you're looking for instance, I specialize in engagement and as well as in virtual programs and as well as hybrid programs, then reach out. These are amazing speakers that we have collected here today. And again, I want to thank you for all of those who are here today. All right, so while we have just a minute or two or more, let's get our next speaker ready. And again, if you are our next speaker, make sure that you have your camera on. And again, if you have any other chats for that, let me know. Thank you, Chris, too. I'm going to chat you an updated link to the rest of the speakers today. So you'll see them as we go along. And we have pieces all along here today. All right, now, speaking of which, let's line up for our next speaker. And the cool part here, too, we should have a little bit of music in here. Fun fact, all of today's music was actually custom written by me by AI today. So again, the other cool part about it too is that it's royalty free. All right. Excellent. We have a chance here to stay on time. Coming up next, our next speaker says that imagine that you're having a great career and professional endeavor. Imagine that you have great relationships with your boss, your peers, your teams at work, your spouse, your family, your friends in life, and that you have a life completely filled with true happiness, satisfaction, and fulfillment. This next talk is going to be called The Secret on How to Master Work and Life. Please, let's welcome Hope Yin. All right, Hope, thank you.
I love that music. Thank you,
Thank you,
John.
Hope.
Yeah,
Are you excited for today?
I am super excited listening to your story, how remarkable it is that we are able to live a life due to our ancestors, our grandparents. But what I want to share with you today is now we have that. How can we better leverage what we have? All right.
Outstanding. The stage is yours. Let's go, Hope.
I was eating dinner and chatting with my daughter in my kitchen table. And then I had enough. I stood up with all my strength. I threw the chopstick into the kitchen sink. At that moment, I was consumed with anger. Now you know that chopsticks are not just for eating. They can also be used as weapons. Do not try this at home. You may have never done what I did, but I bet you want to kick somebody sometimes, at least in your mind. As bad as they sound, that moment was a powerful example of how our energy can take over. Even for a happy and upbeat person like myself. Even though I have done only once in my whole life, that was enough for a wake-up call. I do not want to be that mad person. And that is what took me to search for the secret to mastering work and life. Here's the good news. I found it. And I'm going to share it with you today. Are you ready? The secret is called the 7 levels of energy leadership, developed by APEC. I am going to demonstrate the framework using different colored glasses. For me, by leveraging the glasses that improved my vision, I was able to reconcile my relationship with my daughter and build loving and supportive relationships. And for the past 4 years, I have never raised my voice, not even once. Can you do that? And I have been living a fulfilled life in all areas. Are you ready for the secret? Let's begin. The lowest level energy is level 1, which is victim energy. It feels like you're wearing a pair of dark and black glasses. The light is completely blocked. We feel like we are victims. There is no hope. No matter what we do, nothing is going to change. Life happens to us. At the time of the chopstick incident, I was a single mother and the sole custodian of my 2 young children. I often felt exhausted and juggling 2 full-time jobs, not just one. One at work, the other at home. After I threw the chopsticks, I was so scared. What if I threw into my daughter and hurt her? I locked myself into my bedroom and started to cry uncontrollably. Oh no, I'm such a bad mom. Why did I do that to my daughter? Why can't I control my temper? I am doing so much for them and they don't appreciate. Why did I marry their father and get divorced? Why is life so hard? I was swallowed by level 1 victim energy. The next level is level 2, which is fighting energy. It's like wearing a pair of red glasses. This is when we feel frustration, anger, and resentment toward others. When something goes bad, we will find someone and something to blame. If a leader wears these glasses regularly, then they can be intimidating, micromanaging, and creating a toxic culture. Actually, that's one of the top reasons why people leave their companies due to bad management. When I threw those chopsticks, I was furious that my daughter rolled her eyes at me. At the time, I was a respected senior leader at work. When she rolled her eyes at me, I lost it. I yelled at her at the top of my lungs. Why do you do this to me? Do you know that your mom is a respected leader at work and nobody rolled their eyes at me? Have you ever seen I have done that to your grandma? I'm doing so much for you. What else do you need? I was in dominant level 2. At work, we want to be seen as professionals. You may have never lost your temper like what I did that day. But internally, there may be a loud voice screaming furiously. Let's take a breath. Let's move up to level 3, which is coping energy. This is an interesting level of energy because it's an entry point to an energy of feeling good. It's like wearing a bi-colored glasses with pink and black. We can start seeing beauty, but sometimes our visions are still blocked. So when people ask us, how are you doing today? We say, it's fine, just old, same old, same old. We settle for good enough. We're resilient and push through life, but we shovel the feeling of hopelessness and anger under the rug. Sometimes it will come back. In the case of my children, I told myself that I was their mother. So I had to take care of them no matter what, even when they rolled their eyes at me. Because if it wasn't me, then who? Level 4 is caring energy. It's like wearing a pair of green glasses. We're gardeners caring the plants, parents raising children, and doctors treating patients. In the chopsticks situation, I cared for my daughter. The next day, I still cooked for her because I loved her then and I love her now. I also start to think what harm I might have created to my daughter. Later, I did apologize to her. And as you can see, now we start to get in touch with our hearts. However, our love could be still conditional. If you did well, then I love you more. The next level is level 5, which is the accepting energy. It's like wearing a pair of blue glasses. The sky is the limit. Everywhere is opportunity. When there is a problem, we focus on the solutions and we can find win-win approaches. We're collaborative, optimistic, and finding opportunities and possibilities. We accept others as who they are instead of judging them. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody at work behaved like that? In the top stakes situation, I started to look for solutions. How can I not lose temper in the future? And that is actually what took me to find the current framework I'm sharing. How can I raise my children so that they respect everybody under whatever situation? I also accepted my daughter is this teenager who is going through her painful growing stage into early adulthood. The next level is level 6. It is intuitive energy. It's like wearing a pair of purple glasses. And we have connections with other people, whether we know them or not. We trust there is a synergy in the world. We are creative and trust our inner guidance. In the top stakes situation, I tried many different creative ways to build that relationship with my daughter. Now comes the highest level of energy, which is level 7. This is the unconditional love energy. It's like wearing a pair of clear glasses. This clarity allows us to see the world as it is. And we're completely passionate about what we do. Our love is unconditional. We believe this world is one. What happens to them happens to us as well. It is through this level that I expressed my unconditional love to my family and the people around me. So now this is the quick summary of the 7 levels of energy. I wanted to clarify that our energy shift up and down all the time throughout the day. It's like the stock price. For example, you may experience level 1 or 2 when watching the news about the current geopolitical issues. When you support your team member as a servant leader, you may experience level 4, the caring energy, because you want them to do well. When you have a great meal with your loved ones, you may experience level 7, the unconditional love energy. The framework may seem easy, simple, but in fact, it is not easy. We know things that are simple are actually very hard to implement. If it were that simple, then we're going to see more happy people and great leaders in this world. It took me years of practice and being coached to reach where I am now. You may ask, why is this the secret to mastering work and life? Research and studies show that people with higher level of energy, no matter their leadership style, are more successful in career and happier in their personal lives. The higher levels of energy give people solutions, connections, and creation. Then how can we reach the higher levels of energy? The first step is to become aware of your energy levels. Notice your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. Where are you now in terms of your energy? Even your internal dialogue, they can have 7 different levels as well. The goal is not about magically jumping to level 7 all the time. It's not even possible. The goal is to make small conscious shifts. When you feel stuck, hopeless, or anxious, there are 6 other choices you can choose from. pause and ask yourself, what is another way that I can look at this? For example, from level 1 to level 2, instead of saying, why me? We can say, I had enough, something needs to happen. From level 2 to level 3, instead of fighting, we can say, it is what it is, let's move forward. From level 3 to level 4, instead of coping, we can genuinely ask ourselves what I can do for other people. When we operate from level 4 and above, we will find greater fulfillment, better productivity, more peace, and more joy. So I want to encourage you to pay attention to your energy level, starting from now. Not tomorrow, not tonight, now. Noticing which level you're in and see how it might affect your experiences, your emotions, your actions or no actions, and what is the outcome. Remember, even a teeny tiny shift makes a huge difference. I invite you to try a different pair of glasses. This is the secret to mastering work and life. When we have the power to choose our energy levels and uplift our energy, we have the freedom to create the life we want. I want to share with you the text message I got from my daughter a few days ago. I love you so much, Mama. The reason I have been able to be anything in my life has been because of you. I look up to you a lot, and I am really thankful that you are my mom. If you want to become a better parent, a greater leader, or build a high-performing team, contact me and we can work together to change this world one leader at a time. Thank you.
Outstanding. Let's give it up for Hope Yin. If you're here with us in Zoom, hit the chat. And of course, now too, if you have your cell phone, take out your cell phone, or you can click the link. I got the link now inside of the chat. And if you want to really tell Hope something that you loved about this presentation, that is the place to do it. Now, Leo came back here and said, I really love the small conscious shifts. Hope, what's a good example of like a time when you used a small conscious shift to really just make a different experience for you?
Yeah, it's everywhere, every day, every instance. I certainly believe that every instance is an opportunity for us to stay where we are or to become the version that we want to be. For example, in terms of today, I can become anxious about, oh my God, I'm going to give a speech, which would be level 1 energy. But I can also think about, I'm going to showcase our capability as AANHPI speakers so the world can see how capable we are in our own ways. Now I'm at level 6 and level 7.
Well, outstanding, Hope. Thank you so much for that. What is it? One other PhD too. There are a lot of parents that are in here in the audience, or somebody who said that they're at the level 3 as a parent. We get these eye rolls now from our children. What is like your best advice for the parents out there to use these 7 levels?
Oh, that's a great question. I struggled a lot. This is why it was my example, right? Sometimes you really want to disown them. So I think it's accept, which is level 5. Accept that they are children. Sometimes I feel that we are comparing them to us when we were at their age. Sometimes we have expectation of almost like adults. You should know what you are doing. You should know that you can do better. I think if we switch that perspective of they're just a teenager, they're just a 5 years old, and have that curiosity to look at things from their perspective, build that relationship, and also be smart about, I do want to lecture them, but it's not now. It's when we are going to an event where happy. And that's when I say, hey, honey, you know, the other day, blah, 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 this is how you can do better. Find the right moment to have the right conversation.
Outstanding. All right, everyone, one more round of applause or chat your thanks to Hope Yin. Thank you,
Thank
Hope.
you, John.
All right, we have our next speaker coming up. Here comes our next speaker. She's going to talk about the culture of one, transforming cross-cultural barriers into high-performance drivers. She's one of 400 National Speakers Association certified speaking professionals, and she is the first to receive, she's the first Japanese person to receive this certification, as well as being one of the most amazing dancers that I know. Please put your hands together and put your hands in the air or hit the chat for Netsuya Lipschutz.
皆さん、こんにちは。信田つよです。今日は異文化の話をしたいと思います。Wait, what? Okay, I switched to English. Do you understand me now? We wish. In a cross-cultural team, just because the same language is spoken doesn't mean that your message is clearly heard. Over the years, we have developed our own layers of assumptions. And our values might be influenced by our family, friends, colleagues, or the society we live in. Well, it seems like some glasses themes going on today. And this is how we look at the world. This becomes our common sense. And guess what? We don't even know that we're wearing these. Now, one day, I was sitting in a meeting with my clients. Half the people were Japanese, and the other half German. Someone proposed some ambitious plan. A Japanese manager said, "That's difficult." A German engineer said, "That's difficult." Translation: German engineer. That's difficult. I love difficult. I'm taking this challenge. A Japanese manager. Translation: That's difficult for us to do. We must consider different scenarios so we won't fail. So for now, I'm rejecting your idea, but I don't want to be rude or disturb the harmony of our team. So I'm saying no in a very indirect way. Please read between the lines. What stood between them? In a cross-cultural team, your common sense may not be so common. We need to remove these layers of common sense, assumptions, unwritten rules, our ways of doing things, and start communicating effectively beyond our differences, whether the differences are in countries, generations, industries, or communication styles. But how do we remove these layers? They're invisible. The answer is in embracing the culture of one. Now, we are like an onion. There you go. Like an onion. Well, not the smell, the layers. We're layered with influences from many different sources, like our family, friends, school, company, associations, clubs, society, you name it. And these multi-layered experiences shape our unique values, perspectives, and communication styles. And we form our own one-of-a-kind culture. And I call it the culture of one. To truly understand someone and to break through a cultural barrier, we can't stop at the outer layer of an onion, the national and ethnic level of culture, and just learn about some cultural norms. In today's world, we can leverage AI to learn some national cultures or cultural norms, right? And try putting in ChatGPT something like, tell me 5 things I should be aware of when doing business in Denmark, or what are some colors I should avoid wearing at a Chinese wedding? And you can do some fact check right there. But what you can't research, what you can't find out is, or you can read a book about specific organizational culture, or not alone, about a person sitting right across the negotiation table. So relying too much on research data or theories or models to learn about cultural norms only leads you to have research-based unconscious bias. And I call it sophisticated stereotypes. And these sophisticated stereotypes lead to divisions between we versus them. And you can't have effective leadership that way. Cross-cultural leadership is not about where they come from, but how you connect with who they are. And we need to peel back these layers of onions and get to the core and deeply understand the individuality hiding under the surface. If you want to effectively lead people with different cultural backgrounds and bring them to a high performance team, we must transform how we think about cross-culture, transcend cultural norms, and translate cross-cultural barriers into high-performance drivers. And it all starts with embracing the culture of one. But here's the thing. The culture of one of people is not going to reveal by itself. You need to uncover their culture of one. How? You need some magic words. 3 words. Sei wa kan. The timeless Japanese principles that my late father instilled in me. And by the way, this is the scanned copy of my father's actual handwriting. So what does sei wa kan mean exactly? Sei stands for sincere curiosity. Sincere curiosity helps us explore people's perspectives without bias or filters or judgment. When we face differences, our natural reaction is to think, they're wrong. It's almost automatic, right? We immediately apply our own common sense and assume that our way is the right way. But what if you pause for a second, get a sincere curiosity hat on, and say to yourself, that's interesting. What's in this gap? This internal dialogue opens up whole new horizons for more opportunities. With sei, the sincere curiosity, we can embrace the culture of one where cross-cultural barriers will dissolve and transform into powerful drivers of high performance. Next, wa. Wa means listen and harmonize. In culturally diverse teams, wa becomes especially important. With so many different cultural backgrounds, communication styles, and ways of thinking, creating harmony is not automatic. You have to be intentional about it. You need to listen to not just the words, but the context hiding under the surface. And it's like dancing with a partner. Now, John mentioned a little earlier, but I'm a cross-cultural facilitator, but also a competitive Latin dancer. Have you ever seen Dancing with the Stars, like cha-cha, samba, rumba? That's what I do, but better. Now, Latin dancing is a very interactive partnership dance. We move together as a team on a spur of the moment. But we don't talk to each other during the dance like, okay, now I'm going to turn you next. Ready? 3, 2, 1. We don't do that. Then how do dancers move spontaneously and yet move in sync? We listen to each other's nonverbal cues. It could be just one breath. It could be a slight flick, or it could be a gentle push. What message is your partner trying to send you? Listen to those nonverbal cues and then adapt your movements. Dancers can effectively communicate what we want to do next, how we want to do it, and which direction we're going, because we're laser focused on listening to each other's deep intentions. That's why we can create harmony as a team. And that's wa, listen and harmonize. In diverse teams where you face many differences, It especially becomes an important skill to learn to listen to what is meant rather than what is said. And you can do this dance with your diverse team by strategically using good questions. Now, what are good questions? Well, that's a good question to start. So good questions allow them to deepen their thoughts, widen their thoughts, and help them move forward. Good questions come from a blind spot. If you ask questions that they're always thinking about, there's no learning there, right? So that's not a blind spot. For example, if I ask John, how can you create engaging virtual meetings? Well, he's written a book about it. I have it right here. He's a pro. He's always thinking about it. So that's not his blind spot. But what if you ask a question that they have no idea about or they're not even interested in? You're still not going to get anywhere. That's also not a blind spot. So for example, if I ask John, okay, I have a virtual meeting coming up. Which lipstick should I wear, Chanel or Estee Lauder? He doesn't know. He doesn't care. Or does he? Well, that's not a blind spot either. Good questions are in the vicinity of what's always in their mind, but they haven't thought about it from that particular angle that you're giving. So that's a blind spot. What if I ask John, how do I engage vision impaired audience in virtual meetings? That would be something he might say to himself, let me think, right? So the power of good questions is in your angle. Good questions invite them to think differently, dig deeper into themselves, look for answers within, and provide information. When you listen with good questions, you can uncover deep insights and bring harmony to your team. With WA, we can embrace the culture of one where cross-cultural barriers dissolve and transform into powerful drivers of high performance. Now, communication doesn't stop at the individual level, right? In diverse teams, it's not about just understanding one person. It's about connecting those individual perspectives to do more together than we can alone. And that's where the final element of Seiwa Kon comes in, Kon. Now, Kon means yes and spirit. Some of you might have heard of it, but yes and is often used in improv theaters. Instead of immediately dismissing other people's idea, you accept it and build upon it. And that's what Kon is all about. Having the courage to say yes to challenges and differences and to build on them, rather than holding on to what you thought was the right idea. In culturally diverse teams, conflicts are inevitable. Differences in communication styles, values, and approaches to problem solving can easily lead to misunderstandings, miscommunication, and mistrust. But with Kon, the yes and spirit, you can validate different perspectives, build on each other's strengths, and facilitate collaborative solutions. With Kon, we can embrace the culture of one, where cross-cultural barriers dissolve, and transform into powerful drivers of high performance. Embracing the culture of one means we have to do more than just learn about cultural norms or simply adjust our language. True cross-cultural collaboration begins from within. We must transform how we think about cross-culture, transcend cultural norms, and translate cross-cultural barriers into high-performance drivers. Our cross-culture journeys are all different and unique. You may face differences with not only with your overseas clients or culturally diverse team, but also with different departments, different generations, or different personalities. Before today, you might have said, that's common sense. Before today, you might have judged. They're wrong. But after today, you know what to do. Remember the say wa con. It may take some trial and error, but if you find yourself caught in layers of glasses, be sincerely curious and say, that's interesting. What's in that gap? Listen beyond words, ask good questions, and bring harmony to your team. And if you feel stuck, remember to say to yourself, yes, and build on each other's strengths. Stay walk on will guide you to transform cross-cultural barriers into high performance drivers. And it all starts with embracing the culture of one. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Natsuya. Luchats.
Thank you.
Outstanding. All right, Natsuya. Oh, good. You got your QR code. I'm going to leave this up here.
Yep.
Let's see if I can get a chat for that. And so Natsuya, yeah, I love this culture of one, and I love that it came from your father, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And what's an example of you using the culture of one in your own life, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, in my own life. Well, Hope was talking about the parenting, and I have a 13-year-old daughter. And oh boy, I'm in stage or at level 3. I'm just coping, right? She has a very different culture. Even though she half of her is me, she's a different person, and I have to treat her as a different person with a different culture. So I'm practicing culture of one every single day. I need to be sincerely curious about why is she rolling her eyes right now, and why is she silent? And I'm using a lot of good questioning techniques to get her to want to talk, and get more information, because she's not going to share with me the information I'm looking for. And most importantly, yes, and yes, she's different. Yes, she's rolling her eyes, and yes, she's giving me an attitude, and I'm going to do this. So culture of one, understanding culture of one, treating her as one individual, and practicing Seiwa Kon every single day. If I can remember, if I can control my emotion, that works.
That's amazing. Well, look, I had to get in on the glasses thing here too, right? That's all I think.
Yeah,
like,
I saw that. Well, you need to remove your glasses.
Right. Oh, yeah. So if I was practicing the cultural one, right, let's see, I'd have to take off my glasses and see Natsuya clearly, right? Thank you so much, Natsuya. Oh, I have one other question here too. You're 1 year into your certified speaking professional. I'm
Yes.
just curious. Both of us received it on stage. So I was on stage with Natsuya last year. What feedback or what things have you think have happened since you received your certified speaking professional?
Well, I was invited to be part of the CSP committee of the National Speakers Association.
Right.
So now, it hasn't been even a year yet, or almost a year, and now I'm in a position to select CSPs. So that's such an honor. And honestly, I'm feeling a lot of pressure as a CSP. All kinds of imposter syndrome, is kicking in, like, oh, I should be this, I should be that, but I need to accept the fact that I'm a CSP, and I need to be confident, and I need to be performing. So I'll be following the 7-step process, Hope. That was very helpful.
Well, good. See, look, we're already all helping each other.
Oh, yes.
Now is the time when videos are being reviewed. And I did get a chance to talk with somebody who had her video turned down twice. So, I mean, this is such an important part of the process. For those who don't know, to get your certified speaking professional, one stage of the process is to submit up to 45 minutes of you speaking on stage. And it gets reviewed by 3 or more CSPs who you don't know through that process. Natsuya, for somebody who doesn't have the CSP, what's one piece of advice that you could give them about just thinking about the CSP?
Well, I would say just focus on your performance. Speaking, the professional speaker is all about, I wouldn't say all about a lot of people can speak well, but to call yourself a CSP, you need to be a professional, the elite professional speaker. And what's the difference between a professional speaker and a good speaker? The performance. When no one wants to hear some babbling and some just information, you can send the information by email or read about it, right? Then why do professional speakers get on the stage to send a message to the audience? Well, the audience wants to be entertained. They want to laugh. They want to learn. They want to be moved. So you, as a professional speaker, needs to be a performer. So the level of performance is what you need to be focusing on as a CSP.
Outstanding. Everyone, one more round of applause for Natsuo Lipschultz. Thank you so much for an amazing presentation today. All right, let's see if I have an intro ready for our next speaker. In a society that champions empowerment, many women find themselves caught in the illusion that self-defense alone can provide true strength and safety. This program is going to redefine true empowerment, building inner and outer defenses, and have a holistic approach to safety. Everybody, please, let's welcome Leslie Liu. Hi, Leslie. How are you today? Oh, hold on. Let me co-host you, make you an amazing speaker here on the AANHBI Showcase. There we go.
What's up, John? Everybody, I am fired up. Hold on while I do a backflip. I actually can't do a backflip, but I'm fired up and I'm feeding off of everyone's energy today.
Genius. Well, thank you so much. All right. Thank you, Leslie, too, for stepping in here. And now I'm going to give the stage to you, and let's learn more about this topic. Go ahead, Leslie.
Amazing. People don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. So today I'm going to be speaking from the heart. I don't have any presentation or slides. I want to focus solely on the message. And the title of my talk today is What You Know About Self-Defense is Wrong. Most women think self-defense is about blocking punches or escaping attackers. But the truth is, you use self-defense every single day in meetings, relationships, and life decisions. And because no one taught you the real principles of self-defense, you are getting pushed around in ways you don't even realize. Who told you that you weren't strong enough? That you had to be bigger, faster, or tougher to stand your ground? That courage meant fighting, and self-defense meant violence. They lied, and today we're tearing that lie apart. I'm Leslie Liu, also known as The Warrior. I'm the founder of a company called Reclaiming Your Courage. I'm a 2-time black belt and lifelong martial artist of 25 plus years. But I'm not here to teach you how to fight. I'm here to teach you how to stand in your power. Self-defense isn't about throwing punches. It's about saying no without guilt, walking away without explanation, trusting your instincts, and taking up space unapologetically. This is more than safety. It's about reclaiming your right to exist fully in the world. Let me take you back to 2000, okay? I'm in my college dorm room, and I hear screams down the hallway, and it's my best friend at the time. Leslie, I need you. And automatically, that bat out of hell mentality came. I rushed down the hallway, and I kicked down a door with all my might like a Jackie Chan movie. Because I'm ready. I've got that fighter instincts. I think I've got this. I've got training. And what I'm really relaying here is that I knew that this moment was coming because I laid myself on the line for my best friend. Because I understand the patterns of abuse and domestic violence and gender-based violence, it's because I had seen so many moments in which they were fighting publicly, the flowers and the apologies that came with him as the abuser, the bruises on her wrists. So being that loyal friend and that fighter to a fault, I'm like, I'm going to rely on my 2 black belts and this training. I'm going to win this fight. But that didn't happen. And what ended up happening is that I was left with a concussion and broken ribs and punished essentially for stepping in. And part of the lesson here, ladies, is that we don't fight aggression with aggression, okay? And so I want to teach you part of a warrior framework. And it's about learning how to fall and rise again. And it is the core of every warrior's journey. It's not about the physical act of falling, but about resilience, adaptability, and inner strength. So something I want to talk about is lesson number 1, accept the fall. Resistance creates more pain. Falling is inevitable, whether it's in self-defense training, business, relationships, or personal growth, you will hit the ground. A warrior learns to embrace the fall instead of resisting it. Resistance causes more harm, physically and emotionally. And the faster you accept the fall, the faster you can rise. So remember that story I told you about back when? I didn't actually know how to physically fall, ladies. And that actually cost me a really, really severe head injury. And so today, if you're open to it, I'd like to teach you a lesson that will actually help save your life. Okay. So if you're with me, ladies or gentlemen, or anyone that's on, if you have the ability to put your video on, I would love that. And I'll wait. All right. I see some brave warriors here. Amazing, amazing. Let me get my background off here. Okay. So this skill, ladies, is something that's important because as we grow older, even if we never get into a physical altercation, we have to properly know how to fall. And this is a lesson I wish I would have known back in that story, okay? But metaphorically, whether we are entrepreneurs, whether we are in our careers, we have to be okay. So it's going to take a lot of bravery and courage for you to step out of your comfort zone. And you don't have to get this perfect and right, okay? So those that are willing, feel free to stand up. I imagine that some of you have carpet, hard floor, and it's okay. So here's what you want to do. I want you to Asian squat. That's right. Hands across the chest, chin tucked into your chest. Okay? Yeah, perfect. I see people trying here. Excellent. I'm going to hold for a second and I'm going to show you what not to do. Here is the mistake that most people make because they've never been taught how to properly fall. They try to brace their fall. So if you physically try to fall back, most people try to break their fall with their wrist or their elbow. And the common mistake we see as we age, and for those of us that have supported elders or whatnot, they end up breaking their hips or whatnot. Even as children, you have to learn how to fall. So do not try to brace your fall, okay? All I'm gonna have you do is get back into your Asian squat position, hands across your chest, chin tucked into your chest. And as you roll back, I want you to slap the ground with both of your hands. Nothing intense. You are just rolling back like a turtle on its shell. Just like that. Nothing intense. Okay? It's okay if it feels silly. It's okay. All right? But the key indicator here is to slap the ground because slapping the ground is how you are actually absorbing the shock. Okay? Excellent. All right, you can go ahead and grab your seat. Another concept that I want to teach for a warrior mindset is the ground is not the end. It's a place to reset. When you hit the ground, you gain a new perspective. From the bottom, you can see things you missed while standing. The ground can be a place of reflection, learning, and recalibration, not just failure. Warriors don't just focus on getting up fast, they focus on why they fell and what needs to shift. And so when I was in the hospital, I I thought hard about this altercation with my friend's boyfriend. And it's part of the framework that I teach my clients is there's a fighter mentality and there's a warrior mentality. And I will tell you that you are not meant to fight aggression with aggression. And that is where I made the mistake. It's me resisting. I felt like with every strike and every punch and every kick that I was trying to do to overpower him, that I would have won, right? But a warrior is strategic. A warrior is someone who is going to think about how to get back home safely to their loved ones. And so a fighter is someone who comes from a very reactive place, who is just going to rely on physical prowess. And so how you can translate this into life and businesses is that warriors are intentional. Okay. So if you move and in and out of situations that make you uncomfortable, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's with a toxic family member, whether it's on the street, is to have an inner knowing that you are worth fighting for and that you have what it takes to get yourself out in and out of every situation. I want to leave you with what we started with, was that who told you that you weren't strong enough, that you had to be bigger or faster or tougher to stand your ground? Falling isn't failure, it's the setup for your rise. True self-defense isn't about fighting, it's about choosing yourself over and over again. Your voice is a weapon, your presence is a shield, your boundaries are your armor. Thank you very much.
Outstanding. Let's give it up for Leslie Liu. Thank you, Leslie. A two-time black belt. Now, what led you to start your martial arts journey? I'm going to put up a QR code, of course, for you if people want to find out more about you and your journey here. So again, make sure and check out that code, or I will put a link here inside the chat. Leslie, so talk a little bit more. How did you start your martial arts journey?
Uh, Really simply, I was bullied and beat up at school for being overweight. So that's how it started. And lifelong martial artist. I'll fast forward to the evolution. I started my company at the start of the pandemic and at the height of Asian hate crimes because I was sick of seeing people in the community impacted. So I love martial arts, and that's great. But this is not about pepper spray and poking people in the eyes. I am essentially writing a book about how self-defense applies to life and business. So just as people know Sun Tzu and the art of war for sales, I like to teach people the law of assertion over aggression. So very fired up by it.
Oh, very fired up. And when did you start your black belt journey or your martial arts journey?
When I was 8 years old. And
oh my gosh. Oh.
2 black belts by the time I was 22.
And I've met a lot of martial arts school owners, and one of the things that they said is like, the price for a black belt is usually like a lot less than, say, a college degree or anything else. Besides, I think it looks like you dedicated a good portion of your life to it. What's another piece of value that you feel like you got from martial arts?
I think discipline and consistency was something that it did, but really it was finding my own voice because people know the dojo environment, and what it paved the way for me is to be more of a critical thinker, to ask questions, to be able to speak up when I had a male instructor or someone who was making me uncomfortable, was too close for comfort, um, it helped me find my power, truthfully. So the way that I teach is not traditional. And what I love about that is that when I worked with some key women, there's always women in the group that people are like, she doesn't get it. And then they roll their eyes at her. And I said, what if we focused on this in a very holistic way about mindset, about setting our boundaries? And what I found is that women were far more faster and stronger and quicker once we were able to talk about what it is in life and business and kind of the fears and the limiting beliefs that we were carrying and the words we were using towards ourselves.
Hmm. Well, I love too that you look at martial arts not always as the blocking, striking is what people on the outside think, but that there's a lot of mindset that's on there. Natsuya shared again, her and her daughter were targeted for a hate crime recently, so they took some self-defense classes. I don't know if you've heard my story, but even in 2018, I had two teenagers again call me names and throw a rock at me in Bellevue, Washington, not really, like an inner city location, but it can happen anywhere. So I'm just curious, what's your current view on Stop Asian Hate, and what are tangible steps that people can do?
Number one is realizing that Stop Asian Hate is not a trend and a campaign. If anything, since the election, the percentage has increased over 50%.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you look at the statistics from Stop AAPI Hate, the majority of the assaults are verbal harassment. So a big part, so that's why I'm saying like people have this very extreme view of what they need to know and learn, which is the stuffs. And I'm like, no, it starts with two things. It's being able to hold space for one another and talk about situations like this that make us feel vulnerable. So thank you to Natsuya. Thank you, John, for sharing your experiences. And
Mhm.
if no one's taught you how to use your voice, we have to start there. What do we do? What do you do as a bystander? What do you do as a person, as a person of color when someone is too close to comfort? So that's what I do in my workshops is actually helping people with the framework of like, well, how do you speak up? What do you say? What if what if someone does cross my physical boundary?
Yeah, and I love the phrase you use. You should really look carefully at that phrase about taking up space unapologetically. I recently got off a cruise and had this incident happen in where we came in early and took the middle center seats because a bunch of us wanted to really see the show close up. And somebody was really grumbly. He was from New York, it's funny. He's kind of grumbly New York, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't really take the nice part around away. And I there's part of it was taking up the space, one, unapologetically, and two, there's no rules for saving seats. So this person didn't do that, and I really approached it with love and kindness, and found out he really loved the theater, and out of all the things on a cruise ship, he loves the show the most, right? By showing some kindness. So I just want to see if you have one last tip or one last learning you have about taking space unapologetically. I think that is something really important in API culture.
Oh, definitely. I think that you have the advice I would give is to not preface your statements with "I'm sorry."
Yeah, we have
Boundary
something called the no sorry zone, Leslie. I got to
Right.
tell you.
Yeah, boundaries are not meant to be explained. And I think that the challenges that people have with boundaries is that this is my boundary and this is why you should understand and this is why it's important to me. No, boundaries are clear and concise statements. So if you're watching this, taking up spaces, what are two boundary statements I can start using knowing what the attack is going to be, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
boundary statement literally could be to a friend, I don't have the emotional bandwidth right now for this conversation.
Yeah,
When can we
yeah,
revisit it? Right?
yeah,
And that's loving and
yeah,
that's kind and that's not aggressive. But
yeah,
the other thing that I encourage you to, if you are an AAPI, you identify as that and you struggle with saying it's just like, I don't have to explain myself.
yeah. State your needs, and
Express, it's clear and very concise. We have to
yeah,
be, you have to specify, 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 right? So if it's a physical thing, don't shy. Taking up space means, hey, sir, you're too close for comfort for me. Can you please
right,
take 3 steps back? And that's what I had to teach my clients all throughout COVID. You know it's uncomfortable for you, so just ask for the space, create space. So taking up space is how do you manage space around you? So you don't have to be sorry for asking, I just need some space right now. So just say, I need space right now.
Outstanding. Well, Leslie, thank you for sharing your space with us. It's so great to get this chance to know you, and thank you for being a speaker here on the AANHPI Speaker Showcase.
Thank you.
All right, give it up for Leslie inside the chat. All right, we have our next speaker here too. Coming up next, this speaker has this. Have you ever had a soul-crushing moment at work? It's not a great feeling. And it's also really bad for business, which is why businesses thrive when they use a soulful lens. This keynote's going to explore the conditions necessary for a soulful organization. We're going to start by defining soul, soulful lens, and soulful organizations. And we're going to delve into shifting into language that fills and expands our souls. We're going to lay out the framework for the soulful organization, including the soulful leader and the soulful team. Let's do us a favor and let's welcome to the stage Jardina London.
Thank you, John.
Jardina,
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Great to have you. Love this purple color you got going on here.
Thank you. Everything's purple in my life. Can you see
All
my
right.
screen here with the whole thing?
Yes, we got here. How can you create a soulful workplace?
Okay,
And we're ready to
excellent.
go. The stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I love talking about soulful workplaces. So let me just talk about what I'm gonna share with you today. So two things we'll cover in the 15 minutes. What is a soulful workplace and how do we create a soulful workplace? And hopefully I can leave you with some tips to be able to start making your workplace even more soulful when you leave here. Just a little bit about me. I'm Jardina London, a mother of three teenagers, which you know that really will test your soulfulness even at home. But most of my work is as a consultant. I run a small consultancy, a boutique consultancy, and from that, I do what a lot of consultants do, right? I help with productivity, I help with transformation, I help, workflow better. But one of the things that I realized at some point that I do that not all consultants do is I sort of give them a side of soul. And I don't market that. They don't pay for it. They get it for free with when they hire me. But that's a little bit of my differentiator is that I can help companies become more productive without losing their soul. So then I started to speak and write about what that means to weave soulfulness into the workplace, and that's what I'll share with you today. But let me start by just sharing a story about the first time that I had my soul crushed at work. Um, so it's a hot, humid morning in late August. I'm standing in this corporate office park, which you see here, sweating in my grown-up suit that my grandmother helped me buy with her discount at Macy's, where she worked in Manhattan. New Yorkers, don't be cutting up New Yorkers. So I look in the back seat of my car as I'm in this parking lot. I see my small desk lamp and my stuffed bear Pookie, remnants from my recent move across the Hudson River from New York into the foreign land of New Jersey. It's my first day at work after graduation. I'm working at the most successful high-tech company in the world. Now, I know you're all thinking like Google or something, but no, it's 1993, and AT&T is running these mind-blowing ads with a glimpse into the future of technology. You might remember them. It was Tom Selleck saying, "You will," right, about the future. And and Tom Selleck is promising that we can fax from a beach. And I thought, wow, this is really where I want to work. I'm so excited. So I leave my stuffed animal Pookie in the car, walk into the green glass building where my new boss greets me and introduces me to my assigned mentor. So I'm watching these mind-numbing onboarding videos, and my mentor comes in and says, there's going to be a mandatory meeting after lunch, some big company announcement. I'm excited. It's my first meeting. Maybe we're going to talk about the future of technology and faxing from a beach. Remember when meetings were fun? Maybe said no one ever. But I smooth out my grown-up suit and I walk into this packed conference room and a hush falls over the room as the big cheese walks into the front. And I recognize him because he's in these onboarding videos that I've been watching all morning. Well, he stands in the front, taps the mic 3 times, clears his throat, and says, "There will be a reduction in force." This is my first day of college, literally first day. So I turn to my mentor. I don't know what reduction in force means. And he says to me, "Layoffs." Layoffs, my first day as a grown-up, and my soul is crushed. I worry, can I provide a home for my lamp and my stuffed animal? But my mentor says, "Don't worry, they don't pay you enough to lay you off." And he turned out to be right about both things. They didn't pay me enough, and I didn't get laid off. But what I watched over the next few months was really eye-opening. All anyone talked about was who was going to get laid off, what the package was going to look like, when the layoff date was going to be. The atmosphere was heavy with dread. It's all that went on. Nothing about high-tech products that I'd been excited about. That was all shelved. No innovation, nothing happening. No one talking about faxing from a beach. All they talked about was layoffs. And that was the first time, but not the last time, that my soul was crushed at work. So it happened again when I was asked to rank my team members against each other and against other teams. It happened again when I had an idea that then was shut down before I could even get the words out of my mouth in a meeting. It happened when I was required to work on a project that I knew was going to hurt the company. And when I witnessed unethical decisions and my objections are ridiculed. And then my soul was crushed every time. It's just plain hard to get work done. So I'm sure that you can all agree that soul crushing doesn't produce a thriving business. And I'm sure that most of you have experienced at least one soul crushing moment in your work. So just think about that soul crushing moment for a minute, because I know like we can get distracted when we think about our soul crushing moments. So just think about that. And then I'm going to ask you to just do like Elsa and let it go. Okay, so now we all understand what soul crushing means. Now let's talk a little bit about what soulful means. Let's switch this around a little bit because there is something we can do about this. So if you're still wondering what I mean by soulful, and if I say the opposite of what we talked about as soul crushing maybe isn't enough for you, let's look at the definition. So soulfulness means work that you bring the very essence of who you are to work that has meaning for you with people that you feel connected with. And sometimes people ask me, why do I say soul instead of joy or happiness? We're not happy and joyful all the time, is the bottom line, right? We can't be. Sometimes bad things happen. But being allowed to have that range of emotions at work is what I mean by soulful. It doesn't mean forced happiness. There's nothing fun about forced happiness, right? But what is soulful is, no, I had something happen in my life and I feel like there's room for that at work. So when you saw the title and John introduced me as talking about soulfulness at work, I don't know if any of you might have thought that I would have come out looking like this, like a hippie burning incense. But I'm not that. And I'm not that because I think soulfulness is, and not that there's anything wrong with that, incense are lovely, but I think that soulful is quite a practical matter. I think it's good for business. So like John said in the beginning, soulful workplaces create thriving financials. And what we see a lot in business is you see someone soulful come in or team building and things like that. And then we get back to our regular work of making money. And I don't think that these two things are separate. I'm going to show you today about how we can weave soulfulness into the work, into the financials. So, and make it a very, very practical matter. So let me just start with a foundation of 3 things, which is the 3 conditions for soulfulness at work. First one is dignity. I mean, how many times have you seen people robbed of their human dignity at their work in the workplace? And a lot of our management tools rely on the fact that you want to pedal for that self-worth, and we can pull it away a little bit and give it back a little bit and play with your dignity a little bit to keep you motivated and working. So that carrot and the stick is often at the expense of our own dignity. 2, creativity. And I don't mean artistry or music writing here. Creativity simply means bringing something into existence, and being able to do that at work is energizing and soulful. And if you don't have an opportunity to bring something, make something into existence, your work can be very soul crushing. And then the last one is connection. A sense of belonging. I mean, we spend a lot of time at work. If we're not connected, we talked about inclusion earlier. If you don't feel like you have a sense of belonging at work, it can be a very soul-crushing place. So those are the three conditions for a soulful workplace. I just want to talk a little bit about why connection's so important to business, right? We know it feels good. We hopefully we think it feels good, but it's important to business because when you have low trust, you need a lot of process. You need a lot of bureaucracy. That's why bureaucracy happens because we have low trust. But if you instead spend that time building trust, you really can have a lightweight process that and things can move a lot faster. So instead of being rigid and slow, you're enabled now to be adaptable and fast, which is better for business. We're connected, we trust each other. It works on both ends, right? It's a virtuous cycle. Okay. So just a couple of things here on how we might implement some of this because I've given you the abstract. So soulful meetings. I have a free download for you that you can pull about soulful meetings, but just a couple of things. You don't need to be running the meeting to inject soulfulness into your meetings. You can do this. If you have a meeting later today, go try it. One way that you can, and there's many ways to bring soul to your meeting, but one of my favorite ways is just as a participant, clarify the objective. Why are we here? What are we getting out of this meeting? In a kind way, right? But when meetings tend to meander and we're not sure what we're doing and we're not sure what we're talking about, that's soul crushing, right? That's soul crushing on a micro level. Hey, why are we here? What's the objective of this meeting? What do we want to get out of it? Now you've set that meeting up to be a little more soulful than it was 5 minutes ago. Empower someone else's idea. When someone gets shut down in a meeting, it never feels good, right? That's one of the top soul crushing things I mentioned in the beginning. Someone has an idea that got shut down, and you say, wait a minute, I want to hear more about that. Undoing some of that shutdown that they were feeling, that's really soulful. That helps. And then the last one I would say, quick tips for bringing soul to your next meeting. Create a visual right on the board, share a screen, put something up there, share a Word document and type into it at a minimum, right? Create some visual so that that conversation doesn't feel like it's meandering all over the place. It helps. These little things that you can do, even when you're not running the meeting, help with the soulfulness. So a couple of things here about soulful metrics. So let me share with you, a lot of people think metrics are so unsoulful, that all they care about is numbers, that kind of stuff. Metrics can be extremely soulful. It helps. Now, first of all, using metrics to manipulate people, never soulful. Let's just put that out there. Okay, so we don't want to do that. But they can link soulfulness to your company's financials, right? You can show now through metrics how building trust has allowed us to work faster. So please use metrics for that. And the bottom line is money fuels the company. So clear, transparent metrics reduce that uncertainty and surprise in decisions. So you can really use them to be more soulful so that you're not being blindsided by some of the decisions that are made. People can all be on the same page about what we're looking at here. So all of those things, it's less about someone's opinion, and now we're sharing the same data. And that creates soulfulness. That's less soul crushing. In my example, where they had the layoffs, had people seen the data that was leading up into those layoffs, it would have been a lot more soulful than just one day getting an announcement from the big cheese walking to the front of the room, right? So this is ways that we can use metrics to be more soulful. Just examples of ways. I have lots of thoughts on this, but this is just a little teaser for you. And then the one final thing I'll tell you about is soulful feedback, being able to give frequent feedback in a kind way that doesn't do more harm than good, because it can do more harm than good, is a very soulful workplace. So I have whole trainings on giving soulful feedback and receiving, but giving a couple of tips for you. It's not about you. It's not about the fact that you were mad or annoyed or irritated. Don't sugarcoat it, which we talked about, I think, on the last talk, we heard about not sugarcoating and being very direct and concise. Just normalize it. We give feedback all the time. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. On the receiving end, don't be defensive. Just say thank you, and you can ask for clarification. And all of that creates this virtuous cycle of feedback. So we talked today, 3 conditions for soulfulness: using soulful language and metrics, soulful meetings, giving and receiving feedback. And with that, I just want to leave you with a quick story about one of the companies I worked with early on, where I helped them with some of their agility. But what happened was they got some soulfulness. So on the last day of the project, I was in the elevator and Frank came in, a software developer who'd been on the team for 15 years. He'd worked there and worked on this project with me for about 6 months. He got on the elevator holding that giant glass award that you see with his name etched in silver. And I said, "Hey, congratulations, Frank. Good job." And he said, "Yeah, we had unprecedented success on the team." But then, with tears in his eyes, he looked at me and said something I won't never forget. And I always cry when I tell this story. He said, "What's more important is that it changed my life." And then he said, "For 15 years, I came into this building, I sat in my cubicle, I quietly did my work without even knowing the people that sat around me. Now I have friends here. I have people I eat lunch with instead of eating at my desk. I'm energized when I come to work, and that is worth more than any award." And Frank found soul at work, and you can too. Thank you for having me. Businesses thrive when they use a soulful lens. So please bring soulfulness to your next meeting. Thank you so much for having me. You can get this free download here if you're interested on bringing soul to your next meeting. And I appreciate being here.
Outstanding. Let's give it up for Jardana in London. Thank you so much for this beautiful, soulful presentation. We have a link for you too. You said that giving feedback is one of the key items here. So we're going to provide a way for you to do that. There's a QR code, and there's also, of course, a link inside of the chat if you want to give Jardana some feedback from there. Jardana, what started your path to soulfulness?
This one says Leslie, John.
Oh, did I say? No, on the oh, sorry, on my slide, that is correct.
That's okay. Oh, I see how
There
it
you
works.
go.
There you go. Thanks, John.
I was looking at the chat. I'm like, hey, I got the chat right. Well, thank you
No
for that.
problem.
Jardina, where did your path for soulfulness start?
Well, it started because I was, I'll tell you a little bit. I was technology and math. So I majored in computer science and math. So I really
Oh,
thought that we could just like not talk to each other and just, transact with each other. And I very quickly, right after that story I told you about the layoffs, but I very quickly realized that that's just not how it works to get big things done in the world. And so I really had to, that's when I moved into more of transformation work because it is just not about transactions.
oh, genius. Kathleen says, this presentation gave me lots to think about. I don't know if you knew, Jardina, I spent 10 years at Microsoft, shipped 10 products, got 2 as
Oh,
fast.
no.
So I
Excellent.
started also on the technology side. Now I have to, of course, ask this question here too. On your website, you said you love making your 3 teenage kids laugh just as they take a sip of water. What is one of the top ways that you can make these 3 kids laugh?
Oh, well, because they're teenagers, just any of the things that make me seem outdated makes them laugh, right? So anything I say about TikTok or, a memes, when I don't understand their memes, that really is funny to them.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, hilarious. I know I had I know everything is text now these days too. My kids, I have some very funny stories about when my kids were in this teenager age as text. Oh, let's see. Let's have one other question in here too. What's the best story that you have about using soulfulness that really made a change inside a company?
There's so many. That's why I love being a consultant. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kanban boards, but Kanban boards are a way of managing work very visually.
Mhm.
And I helped one of the teams get onto it, get all their work off of, wherever they had it in their notebooks and stuff. I don't, who knows where it was, and onto a Kanban board where they could all see it. And when they saw how way over capacity they were, and when a new priority came in and they can say, where does it fit on here? Instead of taking it on their shoulders, I physically saw these people's shoulder, like bodies change. Like they were just burdened by all of this. There's so much work we don't know, we can't handle. I said, well, let's write it on the board and then we'll figure out what to do next. And they all like could breathe. And that was one of these moments for me, like, this is not just a work management system. This is a soulful system.
Mm. Well, referring to my good friend Tyler Paris he wrote the book on chief of staffs, and the Kanban board is like one of the top tools for chief of staffs. So
Oh, cool. I love it.
yeah, outstanding. All right, everyone, let's give Jardana or London a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thanks
We
for having me,
appreciate you
John.
being here. All right, coming up next here, let's see what we have here. coming up next? All right. This speaker is going to share his experience of starting an Asian men's mental health support group over 5 years ago. And Leo, I just went to a men's retreat, so this will be good fodder for conversation. It will begin with his personal story of wrestling of what it means to be emotionally vulnerable as a man when he didn't grow up with that being acceptable within his family or his society. His own sense of loneliness and inauthenticity in all areas of life led him to seek therapy and personal development work. Yet he never saw a dedicated community for Asian men specifically to come together and talk about the intersection of cultural and masculinity. Please, let's welcome Leo Shai. Hi, Leo. Oh, let's see, Leo, make sure I co-host you. Hold on 1 second. There we go, Leo. How are you doing?
Hi, good.
There we go. Look at the mic and the voice and the coat. I love the coat. Where'd you get that at?
Thank you, thank you. It's a brand my friend works with, so very fortunate. Thank you for having me. I want to. Oh, are we starting with some questions, or are we going straight into it?
It's up to you. All right. If you're ready, I have 15 minutes on the clock for you, and of course, you can use it however you'd like, Leo. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Outstanding. All right. The stage is yours, Leo, and just let me know if you want me to join you. I'm happy to do that. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you.
Here we go.
I want to start with some statistics today. So in 2018, Asians were 60% less likely to have received mental health treatment as compared to non-Hispanic whites. Suicide was the leading cause of death for Asian and Pacific Islanders, ages 15 to 24, in 2019. And in 2015 and 2019, Asian men were the least likely to use mental health services compared to any other race and gender combination. So these numbers have been known for a while, but I have had the unique privilege of facilitating mental health discussions for over 600 Asian men, ranging from age 18 all the way to 60 over the past 6 years. And this was all through online and in-person support groups and experiences. Through these, I've been able to gain a pretty tangible insight into the unique challenges that Asian men face as they navigate the intersections of their masculinity and culture. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Leo Xia, and I am a facilitator and coach for Asian men's mental health. But I wanted to get into my story a little bit. How did I get into this work in the first place? For that, I want to begin with my specific Asian American story, because for all of us in the Asian diaspora, there's so many diverse life paths that bring us to where we end up. So I was born in the Bay Area, but when I was 6, I moved to Beijing, China, because of my parents' work. The key word for me in this story is belonging. Because I grew up going to an American school in Beijing, I felt kind of lodged between two cultures in a way that was extremely uncomfortable. I wasn't Chinese enough for the locals from the way I dressed and talked, so I was really excited to come back to America where I belonged. What I didn't anticipate was that when I came back to the US at 18, I actually felt deeply not American enough. I began to ask myself uncomfortable questions like, well, if I don't belong in China or America, where do I fit in then? Where do I truly actually belong? Something else I began to notice about myself in college is that I always leaned on my female friends for emotional support and to talk about the more difficult things in life, like relationship troubles, anxieties about the future, career, all those kind of things. I began to wonder, why didn't I lean on my male friendships for that same level of support? Because I was spending a lot of time with my male friends, just not talking about these deeper emotional things. For me, I realized there was a trust factor that wasn't there. For me, it was a combination of things. Socialization as a young boy from friends and older male figures that did not express emotion in that same way, because there was this tacit understanding that vulnerability is weakness, and weakness is like dying. So did not want to do that. Also experienced that hyper competitiveness from other boys in sports that left very little room for connection beyond high performance. Also had a stoic father who worked hard and silently to create financial stability alongside a hefty amount of emotional neglect as well. And also another final piece was consuming media that presented men as the heroes who always knew the right thing to do and never showed fear. All these things built me up to be a man that feared vulnerability and connection more than feared vulnerability more than I yearned for actual connection and belonging. So for me, over time, I built a strong mask of what I thought people wanted of me, of what a modern Chinese American man ought to be. I began effectively lying to myself by denying that I needed that sense of belonging that my inner voice was telling me to cry out for. A teacher of mine once asked me, "What are you pretending not to know?" And it felt like a punch to the gut. I was pretending not to know that I needed love, care, and the ability to live authentically. I have this distinct memory of going to a music festival with a bunch of my college friends and feeling the deepest loneliness I had ever experienced. So there I was, standing with my closest friends in the world, feeling that even no one here actually knew and understood me on a deeper level. What I realized over time is that while that loneliness stung like nothing else, it was also at least partially my responsibility to live authentically so I could be loved for who I am. When I lie to people about who I am, then I rob them of the ability to truly choose me. So when we talk about Asian men's mental health, this concept is the core of it. The goal is to create spaces where Asian men can show up authentically and not be punished or minimized for it. So the work that we're doing, what is happening now in order to combat this problem, to meet this problem where it's at. This is where I want to talk more about loneliness, especially amongst men. Many have said that there's a male loneliness epidemic that's only getting worse, and I've said it myself. But based on the men I've met and worked with and spent time with and sat in community with, I'd actually like to call it a skills gap instead. So men, particularly Asian men, grow up without practicing the skills necessary to foster and nourish the connection and community that they actually need later on in life. The bad news is that after a lifetime of not practicing these skills, it's pretty hard. You know, when you get into it, it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to feel weird. The good news is that, like any skill that you start out with in life, you can practice it. You can push through that fear of vulnerability to begin making these steps. But maybe I might share something today that I don't usually share with people. Treat it like a science experiment. If I say this, let's see what happens. Let's see how it goes. So again, the good news is that, like any skill, vulnerability and connection can be actually practiced and improved on. So 6 years ago, I started Proud Asian Men, an initiative and support group in Los Angeles focused on creating spaces for Asian men to come together, connect, reflect, and heal. 3 years ago, I started partnering with a nonprofit called Asian Mental Health Project to bring this initiative to Asian men across the country through biweekly online support groups. We now have an email list of over 500 people and regular attendance of at least 25 Asian men in the groups. We've covered topics ranging from family dynamics and body image to shame and self-worth. I really want to highlight that these groups don't just work because it's all Asian men in there. It really works because these Asian men show up ready to share and listen generously. In that energy, we may then connect on how our unique intersections of culture and masculinity have shaped us as Asian men. My job as facilitator is to show up with just pure curiosity. It would be, and it is, such a disservice to show up and say, well, you're all Asian men, so you must experience this. You must go through this. You must think this. There's a lot of assumptions in that kind of energy and statements, because our diaspora and our experiences and interpretation of life's challenges are extremely vast and diverse. It's my job to create fertile grounds for their collective humanities to connect, almost like nodes connecting through energy. They show up open to how their own authenticity may take root, as well as witnessing others planting that seed of authenticity, perhaps even for the first time ever in their lives. I've felt how the frequency in the room shifts when someone says something that strikes at the core of our collective humanity. Some things that seemingly sound simple, even like I felt devastated by that. I felt so lonely during some of these moments in life. I thought I would die, and I didn't know what to do. I feel angry and disappointed at the way I was brought up emotionally by my parents, and it makes me want to scream. It makes me want to punch a wall. I thought I was the only person in the world that felt this broken. So even though it's over Zoom, I can almost feel everyone sitting forward in these moments, because that's what it's like when the node connects, when our humanity connects beyond just living in our own separate worlds. So for Asian men to progress in our relationship to our emotions, it's going to take us witnessing emotional leadership from other Asian men in order to become those same leaders in our own communities. These support groups are opportunities for us to practice holding space for ourselves and others. It is now a deeper brotherhood built on vulnerability, connection, and trust. It was never going to be a perfect process because so many of us as Asian men grew up without that kind of brotherhood. I feel extremely blessed to witness this kind of brotherhood, because growing up, this is the kind of thing I could only dream of, right? To witness one Asian man say to another, "Hey, I see you, I feel you, your pain is real, and I'm so glad you shared it with us. I know how hard that must have been." It's like these kinds of conversations that build new neural pathways of belonging. At the end of the day, it's also important that we normalize help seeking, right? That as men, we can see examples of each other coming through and being the first one to ask for help, being the first one to admit weakness, being the first one to admit, "Hey, I don't have it all together. My pieces are kind of all over the floor right now. Could you guys help me hold it for a second so then I can build myself back up again and go back to life in the way that I want to, so I can show up to myself, my communities, and even my family the way that I want to." It is a separate space for us to come together as Asian men to, frankly, just to feel and expose our brokenness, right? To know that there's that space that we can go to and fall apart without, again, the consequences that we may feel and experience in that for other areas of our life. And to wrap up, I really want to leave you with this: change and healing is possible, especially for Asian men, on the mental health front, on the vulnerability front, on the connection front. It's not easy. It's not going to happen overnight, but when we come together, when we create these spaces where people can feel seen, heard, and valued, we can transform lives. And to any men in this room, or if there's a man in your life that you really want to support in this way to live an authentic life, I want to say this: your feelings are valid, your struggles are real, and you don't have to face them alone. There are spaces like ours and what we're building, the infrastructure that we're building, where you can live in joy and authenticity. Again, it's not going to be easy, but we invite you to come into these spaces to practice with us. And to everyone else, I want to say we all have a role in breaking this stigma around Asian men's mental health. Whether it's checking in on a friend, sharing your own story, or simply listening without judgment, every single action of connectivity between us as humans, all of it matters. So over the past 6 years, I've seen the power of this community. I've seen how much healing can happen when we come together. And I know if we keep having these conversations, if we keep showing up for each other in these crucial moments of pain, of brokenness, then we can create a future where no one has to suffer in silence. Thank you so much.
Outstanding. Let's give it up for Leo. Leo, thank you so much. I got a little time to ask you a few questions too. Let's see if you want to give Leo feedback. Make sure and take your phone out, scan this QR code, or click the link that's in the chat if you are here watching us on Zoom. Leo, I just came from a men's retreat, and
Fantastic.
it's the first time, it's Youth for Environmental Sanity, and it's the first time that they've had an all men's retreat. They talked about it because the issues come up over and over in what they call a jam, which is again, a kind of a group that gets together for a period of time to go through these issues. And that they came up multiple times over the last couple of years, and this is the first time they've actually had it to really happen. And I think one of the key parts that's inside of that is around men supporting each other, right? Where does warrior fit in? Where does the emotions and the feeling fit in? So, and again, this is just a group of men at this stage. That's where this group is at, but not just Asian men. So first, let me just start on the men's side. What's like the top one or two challenge, or the top maybe one or two things that you think would help in that male experience?
Yeah, I think something very common I hear is just that feeling of I'm a burden. I
Mm,
don't want to be a burden to others. I want to maximize the value I bring to others, and I want to minimize love and care that I receive. It's
mm,
a it can be it's like this protective mechanism, but it's also a form of self-punishment as well. I don't believe that I'm worthy of the same support that I would give to others. So that's what I see a lot of men struggling with. And again, like I was saying in my presentation, it takes practice, right? If you've
right.
never
And
asked,
it's
yeah, if
on
you've
the
never
male
asked for
side,
help, if
right
you've
there.
never asked for help your entire life and you're
Yeah.
starting to do it for the first time, yes, it's going to be scary. It's going to be terrifying. So
Because it
takes
was in the
practice.
past, right? The stereotype is perceived as weak, and yet now, if you don't ask for help, quite often you're not living to your full potential because you're missing out on this opportunity because you're trying to do it yourself when you may or may not have the skills and abilities to deal with it. That sound about right?
Yeah, and the first level is maybe hearing a talk like this and then understanding intellectually, oh, I can't ask for help. Okay, that doesn't make me weak. But then the actual physical experience of asking a male friend to support you, to hold those pieces, and then you feel all the fear, all the adrenaline come up in the body. That's another level of the practice. So, for anyone listening to this talk, I invite you to come to our spaces to practice that, practice
Mm.
with strangers, right? Ask for help so that one day, get that muscle up, and then you can ask a friend, a family member. Then you can build this interconnected web in life where you feel that, I can contribute to things, but there's also areas where I can just, throw my hands up and receive love as well.
Yeah, I think I've done now a lot of work in the Asian Pacific Islander space for the last 6 to 8 years, and one of the things I'm completely convinced about is that allyship is one of the most important parts because often as an Asian Pacific Islander, I can't see it myself. Like I've had conferences where I worked on them, and it took my beautiful, right, white Jewish woman ally to come tell me that there were no Asian Pacific Islander speakers in this conference I was working on. And I'm just like, where are these blind spots come from? So I'm curious about your views of allyship and how others can help us.
Yeah, and I think again, it comes from a lot of self-love, right? To soothe all those demons, all those fears within us first, because those are the demons in us that say, I shouldn't trust people.
Hmm.
If I put myself out there to collaborate, to ally, they're not going to give the same thing back. But there's work that we can do within our own communities to like how can we ease some of those fears within ourselves? How can we fill our own cups, so to speak, that when we show up to these moments of allyship and these moments where we can pour into and nourish other communities, that we are our best selves. So I see it as like two pieces. Can we do our own work in our own communities for our mental health, for our wellness, so that when we go out into the world to create these nodes of connection, that we're representing the best parts of ourselves because we've done our own healing as a community.
Oh, genius. Now, where did your path to being a facilitator start for you, Leo?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, I've been doing music mainly most of my life, so I feel like I was always adjacent to those kinds of spaces.
Mhm.
At USC, I was really involved in a lot of Asian American activism. There's a specific program at USC called Circle. I call it the Asian American Crash Course. So it's an 8-week program where you learn about, yeah, Asianness in conjunction with immigration, gender, sexuality, identity, history, all these things, and it culminates in a big retreat. So that was the time and space that was given to me to be like, hey, think about what does it mean to you to be Asian, right? There's no wrong answers here. So that kind of curiosity, that humanity, I wanted to pass forward in my own way. And I found starting and maintaining Asian men's groups was my particular way to do it.
For me in Seattle, there's something called the Executive Development Institute, and it was really
Mm,
started around this fact that well, we've been told that education is one of the ways out, and it is a really useful way out. That about 200% Asian Pacific Islanders have 200% the national average of bachelor's or higher degrees, but we hold like 50% or less of the executive jobs in government, nonprofit, and business. And so
mm.
this program, Executive Development Institute, was started for that, and it really kind of gave me the insight of uh, that's the challenge that's really happening is plenty of qualified people, but not getting the jobs for whatever reason. And so I don't know if what was one of the insights that you got from the Circles program that was in USC?
Yeah, I think it was understanding a lot of the history, right? Our experience as Asian Americans, it doesn't come from a vacuum, right? There's a lot of historical context to it, a lot of socio-political context to it, and that actually lifted a great weight, right? Because otherwise, I'm just looking at my own life and say, oh, why do I not feel enough, right? Why does it feel like no matter what I do, life still feels hard, that I don't deserve certain things in life. So there's understanding the outside historical context, but also going inwards and understanding my own family history and trauma and how that affects how I see myself, right? Like if we're talking about being in executive positions, before I even go out and do the work, is there a part of me that doesn't believe I even deserve to be in that position? So again, like the internal and external work and how that came together. And Circle was a big part of the external work.
What's on the horizon for you, Leo? What's some of the top goals you have for either this year or the years upcoming?
Yeah, wow, what a great question. Thank you, John. A big thing is we're starting to build infrastructure for Asian men's mental health. What that means is I'm looking to train up Asian men in different cities to facilitate support groups in the same way that I do online and in person. The online work is great, but I think, as you said, going to a men's retreat, it hits different when you're standing in front of a man, just eye to eye, being able to look into each other's souls and share on that deep level. So the next goal is in-person experiences, regularity of in-person experiences for Asian men's mental health all across the country.
Yeah, the in-person part is still really an important part. You get all this other bandwidth and time and experiences. So that's why I traveled to Florida like last month for this other retreat. And
Amazing.
if you haven't heard about it, it's called Youth for Environmental Sanity, Leo. If you
Okay,
haven't met them, I'd be happy to introduce you to them. They're doing
would love that.
work similar to this, and they have some amazing facilitator as well as people resources for you. So
Can't wait. Thank you, John. Thank you so much for having
cool.
me.
Well, let's take a look. We got a few minutes here, Leo, in this
Okay.
gap, and I'd like to invite my other speakers. Let's see if Natsuya, anybody who are our guests here, Kathleen, you, Sonia, if you'd like to come on, I do have a little bit of time before our next speaker. I do see our next speaker coming up here. But let's just, we can actually get a chance to just kind of jam a little bit for the next few minutes. So I'll see if anyone else, if they turn camera on, I'll have them join us. So Leo,
Sure.
we actually get a little time extra to talk with this.
Amazing.
Asia Pacific Islander Heritage Month is coming up in May, and I'm just curious, what are your plans? What do you think you're going to do during that time?
Yeah, always a big month for this kind of work. Luckily, the nonprofit that I partner with, Asian Mental Health Project, we started a yearly Asian Men's Day-long retreat last year, which they fully sponsor. It's fully free for participants. So looking forward to planning that. And for any Asian man really across the country, if you want to come travel to LA, be part of this retreat, be part of this movement, it's going to be completely free to attendees. So looking forward to have everyone there. It's going to be amazing.
Cool. Hi, Yush. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to unmute if you got a minute. We're just we got a little time, of
Hello.
course, before your presentation starts. Yush, where are you calling in from today?
Connecticut.
Aha, genius. And what plans do you have for Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May?
I actually focus a lot on I do this all the time, but especially during that month, I help my young boys really get in touch with their sort of that part of their cultural heritage. They are multiracial. So I think it's really important to highlight all the opportunities we have to show that it's not just something that we celebrate at home. It's something that others help us celebrate as well. And I think it's so important. I love what Leo just talked about, supporting Asian men. And I have two boys that are Asian, and I want them to grow up knowing that there's this community around them, people who are similar to them. And I actually think multiracial kids are really lucky because they have a lot of different cultures and backgrounds and that they can sort of identify with. And I think my job as a parent is just to make sure that they're exposed to all of it. So yeah, and also feel proud of their heritage. So I love that there's a lot of celebrations going around. And so yeah, we'll definitely be participating as much as possible. From my perspective, but also just making an effort to ensure that my kids do get that exposure as well.
Yeah, thank you, Yush. I have three kids too, all graduated, all multiracial. And one of the top things that I think I've done is take them on international travel. So at the beginning of this program, I gave the story about the Paper Sun. They've actually gotten a chance to travel to that village that my grandfather grew up in. And that
It's
trip,
amazing.
yeah, I think that trip was such an important part that they've actually used that story in their schoolwork, and none of their other friends, know anything about any of that history. And I do think that as a parent, that's probably one of the more important things that I did was to give them that experience. So I think international travel, I think is super key for any key to just understand that there's lots of other viewpoints than the ones we're sitting in here.
Yeah.
Yusha, have you ever traveled international?
With the kids?
Yeah.
Funny you ask. I just survived a trip with my two young boys to Romania.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I took them, and my kids are 4 and 8, so they're not really travel friendly age. And I decided to take them halfway around the world to a country that, is a 10-hour flight away and 7-hour time difference. We went for a week. We all survived, and it was a great trip. Of course, there were plenty of challenges, but I think that's kind of part of the experience. You figure out what the hard parts are, and then you navigate it together and you grow together. I learned a lot from the trip, and I've been traveling my whole life. And so to really be able to see this experience through my boys' eyes was just really, really rewarding and meaningful. We're still adjusting back. I think they're having a harder time. They literally adapted, and then it was time to come home. So, but yeah, no, it was great. They have such fond memories, and I made a picture book out of their trip. It was just really one for the memory books, and I would do that hard anytime because I learned so much about them too in that experience because you're navigating situations and experiences that you normally wouldn't in at home. And of course, like when you're in a routine that's predictable and expected and you kind of know the drill, you don't really have to experience some of the challenges that arise, right? In a situation where you can't control everything. So I think it was a really valuable experience, not to mention Romania, Bucharest. If you haven't been, it's beautiful. Just wonderful trip, like super kid friendly. The food's amazing. We got eclairs almost like every day because they have a restaurant there or an eclair bakery. It's called French Revolution. And it is actually number 11 on the best eclairs list in the world.
Wow.
Yes. And we got to sample all the different flavors our whole trip. And the boys were just so impressive. They were troopers. And the first 3 days we were there, we ended up getting 19 inches of snow. So,
oh my goodness.
Yes, it was unexpected. The boys loved it. We made the most of whatever it happened. There was nothing we could do about it. And so there were a lot of rewards, and the eclairs definitely cheer them up. So yeah.
One of my favorite experiences in Guangzhou was there was like a place that was like full of vendors, and so there was like an alleyway, and I give my kids all the equivalent of $100, and I told them, try and get as many gifts or cool things that you want, right? And it was really fun to watch them, and it turns out that my youngest, right, is like one of the best natural negotiators you've ever seen in your entire life. And the other part of where the vendors were so funny, they were like, they would just give in to the kids because they were kids. They're like, oh, I'll just give you a better price. And so that's like still one of those memorable experiences of, giving them autonomy and watching what they do. And I think that's one of the greatest things. Leo, have you gotten a chance to travel internationally?
Well, yeah, part of my story is I grew up in China for most of my life. I think when I meet most Asian Americans, they just assume I grew up in California or something. But my dad's side of the family is from Guangzhou. So I went a few years back. My last remaining grandparent, my nai is in Guangzhou. So very, very warm place to me. in my mind.
Very cool. And have you traveled to other international cities in your travels?
Yeah, in high school, I did a lot of choir singing.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
took us to a lot of different cities, Abu Dhabi, Belgium, yeah, Korea, Japan, all these different things. So yeah, more travel during that time than since I've come back to America. But yeah, good memories.
And and I did see online, right? You're a musician. So what instruments or what do you mainly play?
Yeah, guitar, piano, singing. Trade-wise, definitely a songwriter. I've done a lot of writing for TV, film, my own stuff, other artists. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Genius, genius. And where can people find your music online if they were looking for it?
Yeah, Lowhi is my artist name, so LOWHI official on all platforms. As Chris comes back, Chris, I ended up doing my speech early,
Oh
so
no, I missed it.
it's
You're
okay.
my best. This is the best friends hour right now, all three of us.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Hey, Chris, yeah, we're in a little bit of a panel right now, so we got about 9 more minutes, and so we were
Sweet.
just talking about international travel, Chris. So, is there a country that you have traveled to that had an impact on you, Chris?
I think we're going to need the rest of the day for this conversation.
Great question. I would say Italy. Is probably what popped up to me because of the level of excellence that they put themselves. It's a twofold thing, right? Like everything they do, they have a level of excellence that they want to do it, but at the
Mhm.
same time, they have a mental health acceptance where they don't take themselves too seriously at the same time. So I love that work-life balance, and yeah, it's something that to be admired and like to adopt that myself because it's one thing to be excellent, but also to be calm and also be family oriented at the same time. Um, it's a great all around balance altogether.
Yeah, in Italy, I got a chance to bike Italy on one of the back road tours, which is a really nice tour. And one thing I remember is the 100 meetings for Ciao, right? Right? Or
Yeah.
Prego, the 100 meetings for Prego. Like you can say Prego about anything. It's kind of
Oh
like,
yeah.
and so I think that's one piece. And I think the second piece is that I always get from Italy is while we
Mm.
think we have some history here in America,
Oh
we're
yeah.
like there's some European countries got hundreds of years,
Centuries, right?
right? Centuries on, and it's really cool to see some of that century come around and have that much influence on a country. So yeah. So anyways, well, thank you so much, Chris. Now,
Of
Chris, you
course.
know everybody here. This is the party panel for you.
It is a party channel. I'm so glad I came on at the right time. But I know there are a lot of people also, and this whole day that I'd love to meet and I'd love to see how I can help them as well.
Oh, genius, Chris. Okay, so how do you know Yush and how do you know Leo?
Um, Leo is a very fast friend. We are in um a group of mental health and encouragement. I don't know how to call it, Leo. There's so many things that we're doing in that group. So um yeah, uh encouragement, um friendship, and just being there for each other. It's very hard to have a group of grown adult men that are that excel in their own particular fields, but also um get together once or twice a week to have a communal um, healing, communal, um, just some gathering and just making sure that they're at the right place and they're at the right headspace rather for the things that going on in their lives, and we're there for each other. And it's all thanks to Leo and his platform. And yeah, different different areas of engagement. It could be a Slack channel, Discord channel, could be a norm, weekly meetups. So very thankful to have him and his team as well.
Well, thank you, Chris. And Yush?
Well, met through the new program where I was part of the collab with Megan Henschel and her team. Fast friends through IMEX last year, and now she's on to greater, bigger things, and I'm excited to see her journey moving forward.
Genius. Yush, you have anything you want to share with Chris today?
Oh, if it wasn't for Chris, I wouldn't be here. He introduced me to you, John. And actually that wasn't too long ago, but I feel like our journeys have been intertwined in so many ways. Chris has just been such an incredible support system, friend. And I think this is what I love about the Asian community is that we really do uplift each other. And it's almost like no questions asked. If you need me, I'm here for you. And that is just incredibly powerful. And there aren't, many communities I can say that about that I'm a part of. So it's been incredibly fun. Chris helped me navigate IMAX, which was pretty overwhelming. And then, we've just been in touch and staying connected, and it's just been really great to support each other. And thank you, Chris, for showing up today. And
Chris had some of the best comments about last year, which made him a fan. He just said, I think his number one comment was, "Can we do this again tomorrow?" I told him no. And the second
only if I was gonna say if you're John or anybody who's presenting, we probably don't want to do it again today.
But the second part, he came in and he just said, right, it's so amazing to come into a conference, right? 100% Asian Pacific Islander speakers. And it just really was uplifting. And I wrote this in the email that I put out to my group too, that a lot of people said, this is way beyond DEI, right? It's not just all, sometimes some of us have gotten selected as DEI speakers, and there's so much more knowledge here in so many different dimensions, right? That I think that's really, really important. While we got a minute or two left, Leo, do you got anything you want to share with Chris today?
Yeah, Chris, he's just a beast, man. I don't know how he does everything that he does. He still finds time to show up to our men's community, dropping wisdom, dropping his willingness to support anyone. What does he say? He's like, I'm here to help the helpers. I feel like I've heard you say so many different versions of that because you're like, I know what it means to pour out and constantly be giving, but when do you receive? So because of Chris's support, over this probably less than a year that we've known each other, which is kind of nuts. Your support and inspiration, Chris, it pushes me to dream bigger, right? Have a bigger vision for what things can be and like the scale of the impact. So I have a feeling I'll look back in a decade, Chris, and be like, hey, all this infrastructure that we've now built for Asian men's mental health, it's because Chris was there at the beginning to just like supercharge it. So thank you, Chris. And I'm so happy we got this moment before.
Yeah, of course.
And today, or you caught at least the panel end of my talk.
I know, this is fun. I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting to log in early and prep all my stuff, and this is even better because it's so nice to have this conversation to ease into my presentation.
Genius. So I love what Chris said. High vibration individuals gravitate towards each other so we can amplify those who don't have that empowerment. Big statement, Chris. And Chris, really does show one of the things, right, that might be stereotypical of Asia Pacific Islander culture is that we're not as loud, right? And so great, one, to have all these voices, but Chris really demonstrates a way to be a powerful leader is not necessarily being the loudest in the room. And I love that every day I get to hang out with Chris or just sit out and share a meal with Chris. And I look forward to doing that. Because Chris, I'm going to be back in LA. I'm just going to tell you that I'm going to be in LA in April, and we're going to find a time to get together. All right.
I'll find a new car for us to test.
When are we having a conference for AA and HPI community? Is that happening, John?
We're
In
working
person.
on
I
that.
mean, in person. In
I
person.
know, I know. I'm still working on that. Actually, it's fun. Let's meet up afterwards. We're at the stage where I'm going to ask for help. Leo taught me this, that I'm going to ask for help because we got to get like either 1 or 2 sponsors or 1 or 2 more things to really make this happen at least for one day, Yush. And if you want to be one of those people, I want you to be one of those people.
Yeah, let me know. I have 20 years of corporate events experience. So and between me and Chris, I feel like we could probably help you figure some things out. I'm sure he's already involved, but yeah.
All right, well, let's knock this out. All right, well, Yush, you're going to come up next, but thank you to all of you. Thank you, Leo, for that. And of course, thank you, Chris, for that piece here. Let me do a beautiful, amazing intro for our next speaker coming up. All right, let's see. Make sure I got the right one. Okay. Asian American women are often expected to excel in every aspect of life: career, family, personal identity. The model minority myth, I'll say that again, the model minority myth reinforces this pressure, creating unrealistic expectations that API women must be high achieving, resilient, self sacrificing, often at the expense of their own mental health and well being. This session is going to challenge the model minority myth and introduce a holistic, strength-based approach that uncovers the root causes of stress, misalignment, and self-doubt, helping API women move from guilt and overwhelm to clarity, confidence, and empowerment. Let's take this moment now to introduce Yush Salkofer. Oh, Yush, there we go. Thanks for joining in early. Great to have you here. Are you ready for today?
I am, but am I able to share my presentation?
Now you are. I have cleared the space.
Okay.
Runway is open for the one and only Yush.
Let's see.
Start your timer as soon as we get everything.
It says you disabled participant screen sharing. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because you got to make you a co-host. There we go. Now I gave you all the. This is the superpower transfer. Ready? Wonder Twin powers.
Whoa! I'm excited. Hand it over.
There you go. How about now?
Okay. Now it looks like. Can you see?
There we go. I got it. And feel free to put it in presentation mode if you like.
Okay. So today I would love to talk to you about breaking the model minority myth and helping to redefine success, parenting, and leadership for API women. I'd like to actually start off with a reflection question. Have you ever felt like you had to do it all? And John ruined this a little bit for me. Career, family, personal success, without questioning if it is even a choice. If so, I see you, and I am you. So my name is Yush Stahlkopper, and I am in an interracial marriage, raising a high-ability neurodivergent child who is twice exceptional. And I had that career, and I felt like I had to do it all, and that I needed to excel in all areas of my life, because that was the expectation that external forces were placing on me. So today, I wanted to share a little bit about what the model minority myth is. It's a stereotype that Asian Americans are universally high-achieving, hardworking, and successful, especially in education and career. Now, when you hear that, I myself used to think, oh, that's a compliment. I'm that person. I'm high-achieving, I'm hardworking and successful. I should celebrate those things. And the reality is, it's really harmful when you have these expectations placed on you as a general group of people that you should be meeting those expectations. And so the areas I want to focus on is the cultural identity, the expectation that you should be maintaining traditional values while adapting to your new society or your Western society. And then the career expectations around exhibiting professional excellence without appearing too assertive, or too ambitious, where you're just kind of balanced. And the other piece is parenting, the expectation that you have a perfect family and that everything you do as a parent is culturally aligned. And these expectations place a huge burden and pressure on us, API women. And it becomes so harmful that we become overwhelmed and we struggle to figure out, is this something that is sustainable? And how can I break free from these expectations? And so another reflection question or questions, whose definition of success are you living by? And what would success actually look like if you defined it for yourself? So today I would love to share with you my journey. And essentially my journey looks like this. I started in a state of confusion, really uncertain as to who I was, and was lacking that direction to kind of navigate this self-growth. And the clarity was through gaining understanding of who I was, my situation, my circumstances, my culture. And also eventually gaining the confidence, developing that self-assurance that I have a lot to offer and I am a unique individual and I believe in myself. And then the courage, finding that strength to really take those bold actions, right? Doing the things that you had fear of doing before. And then redefining success as the ultimate outcome. How do you create personal definitions of achievement? Things that make you feel like you are meeting your needs and that are uniquely yours and not a construct of external factors, your family, your workplace, your coworkers. And so I was able to achieve all of this through a program called Positive Intelligence. It is mental fitness training that actually helped shift my mindset. And because of that shift, I've been able to go on this journey and really figure out who I am and what my potential is. So the first part of my journey is really about self-awareness through my journey specifically is around neurodivergence. So that clarity was gained through first, my whole life. And for a long time, I thought, oh, I was excelling in my corporate role. I was a really great and present parent and raising boys who are, citizens of great society and just doing a really great job overall. And then I started to see my son's challenges and struggles. And his brilliance was absolutely clear. But his struggles were overshadowing everything else. And while he struggled, I struggled. And I started to question, who am I? Am I the right parent for him? What does he need from me? And as I started to uncover my son's needs, we discover he's neurodivergent and that his brain is wired differently and he has different and unique needs. And so I started thinking, I know I don't currently have the skills nor the tools to support his needs. What am I missing? What do I need to acquire in order to support his needs? And that began my self-reflection journey, where I started to reflect on who I was and what I was missing and what did I need to acquire. And the universe gifted me with this opportunity to be trained in positive intelligence. And that really helped, gave me the tools and the mindset and the skills to navigate this journey. About 2 years later, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And that has been the singular most life-changing experience moment, because it made sense of so much about me that my whole life I wasn't sure why I struggled in certain things, why certain things were hard for me when it was easy for other people, and why I did certain things, why I reacted. So many things became very clear to me, and I understood what those life struggles look like. And so the reflection question for you is, what would happen if you shifted your perspective? Because that's what I did. And confidence was sort of the next phase of my journey, because I used to be somebody who had this deficit mindset. And external factors contribute to that deficit mindset, right? You're judged all the time. Those feelings of guilt, shame, blame, and, anxiety, a lot of that is created by external factors that you then internalize. One of the things I learned from positive intelligence is negative emotions are actually helpful. And as human beings living highly complex lives, we need negative emotions to alert us to when something needs to be addressed or we don't feel safe. And so that alert system, if you use it correctly, becomes a tool that you use to navigate and turn those challenges into triumphs. Whereas if you stay in that negative emotion space, we all know where that takes us, right? It self-doubt, it impedes our ability to be confident, it harms us in many, many ways. And so I started to recognize that my son was being misunderstood and he was being mislabeled, and that took a toll on him, and that made him feel really insecure, and it impacted his self-esteem. And as a mother, I saw all these incredible strengths that he had. And I was like, my son isn't all those things that people see. He's actually way more than that. And so I started to focus on his strengths and leaning into those strengths, amplifying those strengths, and embracing those strengths, and taught him how to do it. And so taking that strength-based approach actually is more of an internal approach, where you start to believe in yourself that, you know what, I choose to look at the things that I'm really good at versus the things that I might need some help in or is an area of opportunity. And so when you shift from fixing to embracing, that is really truly where the growth starts to happen. And so taking that strength-based approach really helped me, because everything that I learned through supporting my son made me realize I needed to take that approach for myself, because I had, for the most part of my life, had this deficit mindset because I grew up in a culture that loves to criticize. I, am surrounded in workplaces where it's all about, by coworkers, where it's all about competition, and it was not the nicest place to be. And until I started to shift into the strength-based approach, I started to then focus on all the things that I was really good at. And the best part about my neurodivergence is I recognize that my ADHD qualities were superpowers. My ability to hyper focus on topics that are really interesting to me, my ability to connect dots and spot patterns, and all these things. And so because of that, I stopped masking. I stopped hiding who I truly was. I stopped over pleasing. I was such a people pleaser my whole life because I was taught that was how I was supposed to survive, and that was what you do. And so, excessive people pleasing behavior, I stopped it. I started to think about my needs. And then I started speaking up. So in the workplace, I started communicating more assertively and more confidently. And I think my coworkers probably got annoyed at some point because I became that person who asked questions all the time. Because that's actually one of my other superpowers. With ADHD, there's this insatiable curiosity. And I used to think that me asking questions was, annoying, or I would scare to ask questions because I might be criticized, or, it might be a dumb question. And now I realize that's how I learn. I ask questions because I'm curious. And the more and more questions I asked, the more and more I learned, and the more and more my confidence grew. And so my reflection question for you is, what's one challenge you or your child faces, and how can you reframe it as a strength? So my journey to courage, which is the last phase of sort of my transformation, through advocating for my child, I realized that I needed to be unapologetic about what I knew about my son. I needed to be confident that I had his best interest at heart and that everything that I knew about him made me an expert. And so I stopped caring what other people thought and I started prioritizing his needs. And that in turn taught me to start thinking about how I advocate for myself. So I started thinking about what my needs were, like deep down, what are my needs? What is going to make me happy? What is my purpose in life? And I did a lot of self-reflection, self-discovery, soul searching, you name it. And one of the considerations was, do I leave my corporate job? I've been in it for 20 years, not at the same company, but in that environment. And I was starting to see that it wasn't a good fit for me because my needs weren't being met. I needed flexibility, autonomy. I needed to work on interests, topics that were really interesting to me. And in any type of role, especially in the corporate environment, you don't really get those options. And so it was really scary to think about, okay, do I leave? Because there's a lot of uncertainty on the other end. And those were my saboteurs, right? That's part of the positive intelligence framework. You have these saboteurs that have self-limiting, those are the negative emotions that come up. And my fear of the unknown, fear of being unemployed, fear of what's next. And then I tapped into my sages. So the sages are the wisdom part, the wiser self within the positive intelligence practice that helps you think through opportunities. And so instead of just thinking about the fear and uncertainty, I started to think about the possibilities. If I left corporate, what would that look like? What are the new opportunities that might come up? What are things that I might be able to do that I can't do if I stay in this role? And so I left. I left the corporate world about a year ago and no regrets, and just been such an incredible experience making a decision that truly felt right for me because I have now become truly who I was meant to be, being authentic and not really trying to meet everybody else's expectations. All the other expectations would have wanted me to stay in my corporate role and continue to climb that corporate ladder. And so that actually helped me get to my current situation, which took a lot of courage, and that's building NeuroSpark Plus. So that is my coaching and consulting business that enables me to pursue my mission and purpose-driven work. And it helps align with my values in supporting my family, myself, and all the people who are part of this journey who are navigating similar experiences as me. So the reflection question is, what's holding you back? So, breaking free from the model minority myth isn't about letting go of expectations. It's really about the choice that you get to make. And so through the framework that I took, clarity gives you the power to question the things that don't make sense to you. And the confidence gives you the power to own your strengths. And finally, the courage is what gives you the power to act. And so what I want to ask is, what's one small step that you can take towards clarity, confidence, and courage? And one thing that I want all of you to take away from this is that your strengths and your potential have always been there. They just need you to acknowledge that this is something that's truly already a part of you, and you just have to figure out how to unlock it. And it isn't about changing who you are. It's just about making you shine brighter. Thank you so much. Keep shining. I appreciate your time. My name is Yush Stahlkopper, and I'm the founder and visionary behind NeuroSpark Plus.
Outstanding. Let's give it up for Yush. And we're going to give you a chance to give some feedback to Yush here. And there we go. Yush, what is one of the, you asked other people a small step that you can take towards clarity, confidence, or courage. You took a lot of big steps. So what's a recent small step that you might have taken?
Well, building NeuroSpark Plus is really daunting. I think being an entrepreneur is one of the scariest things you could possibly do. And I encounter challenges, obstacles, saboteurs every step of the way. And because of my ADHD brain, I have a tendency to think super big picture, and then I overwhelm myself. And as an entrepreneur, you know, there are a million things to do. And so instead of overwhelming myself, I take many steps back and I think, what is needed now? What is one small step that I can take right now that is going to get me to the next phase? So my website is actually coming soon because I realize that's my next step. I need to focus on getting that up there so that people can see who I am, what I do, and how I can help. And without that, it's kind of me continuously talking and sharing, and it's not, you know, it's not scalable and sustainable. So that's one of the small steps that I've taken recently.
Well, genius, Yush. Again, to give Yush feedback, click on the link or take your phone out and scan the QR code. And Yush, I can tell you, you know, in the production world, especially if things are melting down or there's too much going on, I tell all of my producers, you just got to do one thing at a time. And while you
Yep.
have a million things you can do, what you really can get done is one thing at a time. And then things like a website too, once they're done, they'll keep working for you for a long
Right.
time. So that's why some of those items are really high value because you get them done and then they serve you for a good long time and you can always update it later.
Yeah.
So
And I love that you said that, John, because that's actually part of the PQ operating system. One of the stages is activate. And I use that. I literally have it written on a sticky note because it's something I use regularly. And activate helps us think about what is that small step that I can take? Because we all get overwhelmed, right? We all think about this like long-term goal that we're trying to reach. And sometimes we are our own biggest saboteurs. And
Yes.
so how do you get past that and just, you know, I'm just going to take a small step and then see where I go from there. And it's really powerful.
Well, congratulations. So great to see your progress, Yush, and take all those next steps. We'll all be watching you as you progress with NeuroSpark. Thanks again, Yush.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, coming up next here, we have our next speaker ready to go. Right now, many companies know that AI or artificial intelligence is something to pay attention to, but they're not sure where to start. So when budgets are tight and you're running a lean team, how do you do more with less? In this upcoming session, you're going to learn how to be more productive and efficient using AI. You're going to make data-driven decisions that are going to drive growth and profitability. Please, let's welcome Sharon Guy. Right, let's see, Sharon. Hi, Sharon. How are you doing?
I'm good, John. How are you?
Fantastic. Let's clear the pathways here for you. And let's see if you want to share a deck. If you have a deck to share, you are ready to go.
Absolutely.
Great to see you today. How to do more with less. Okay. All right. The
Yeah.
stage is yours, Sharon. We look forward to learning about AI. Here you go.
All right. So I'm going to start off, everyone, with a quick imagination exercise. So if we can all close our eyes for a moment and imagine that we are, what day are we? We're a Wednesday, but way into the future. And you're in your homes, and maybe your home looks like this. Maybe it looks a lot bigger or a variation of this. But you're home and you're holding a hot cup of coffee, and you're just about to step outside to feel a ray of sunshine. So you open your door and you look up, and there is a friendly neighborhood drone here to deliver off a package to you. It's from the shop, your favorite e commerce store. In this futuristic world, the shop is akin to a company like Amazon, a company that knows your wants and needs so well that you never actually need to visit theshop.com to order anything or visit its mobile app. The shop will simply hire drones to deliver off products and packages right to your doorstep. And I shouldn't forget to mention that in this futuristic world, there is no return policy because the shop's algorithm should never fail. And you can open your eyes now and laugh at this ridiculous story. And you might say, Sharon, that sounds like sci fi. How will that ever be true? And you got me. That is sci fi. It's from this first chapter of this sci fi novel called Quality Land. But even though it sounds like sci-fi right now, by the end of these 15 minutes, maybe you would realize that it's not as futuristic as we think. So here's a bit about me. I first got into the AI space in 2017. I remember the night that I was called into an office. I was working at Alibaba at the time, where there is a crazy work culture of the different products that you're working on, features that you have to launch. And I was called in very late at night, and I was shown this design tool that we normally work. So in our field of work, we work with these large e-commerce campaigns, and during these times, billions of SKUs, their designs will change and shift. And we used to have thousands of designers run these campaigns and design these different banners for us. And so that night, I was called in, huddled together in front of a computer of a colleague, and he shows us this tool with a click of a few buttons. He displays the tons of different banners that we didn't need to control anymore, and create on our own. So that was the fateful night in 2017 where I knew that AI was going to change a lot of what we are going to do as knowledge workers. And here we are in 2025. We have felt sort of the rapid pace of change in 2022, but in 2025, it's only accelerating much faster. So here are the top 100 terms in AI right now, which is a very popular word cloud that we know. But this might actually be the real word cloud that's happening in a lot of our heads. And the reason for this is the whole world is at this moment of sense making. And it's understandable because for decades, Hollywood, which is the party that I blame for having this sense making and a gaff or this moment of adaptation that we're having, is that Hollywood had painted this very evil picture of what AI looks like. So, if you've ever watched this movie before, it's called Megan. It's about this little girl whose parents had died in a car accident, and her this company sends her this nanny robot arrives at her house. At first, it's great. She's a tutor for her, or it is a tutor for her. It is also a nanny for her. It also cooks for her and takes care of her. But eventually, as we know, all AI movies go, it goes awry and it eventually starts to kill people. We saw this happen in Ex Machina, movies like I, Robot, movies like The Terminator, and the movies go on and on and on with how evil AI is because it's always at this vengeance of trying to hurt us somehow because they eventually become so intelligent. But in reality, this is what AI really looks like. So if you're a consumer of any of these apps you have on screen, we have also been subconsciously training this body of AI knowledge for these companies as users of these apps. So every scroll, every zoom in, every tap and double tap, and every micro and nanosecond that we're spending on these apps is being measured. And through all of the measurement, there are different algorithms that then show us or queue up content that is more relevant for us. The difference is the type of AI that we have been interacting with, and that's something to note, is that the chess games that we have played, or the phone trees, the automated phone trees that we have dialed into, if you know about supercomputers like Deep Blue or AlphaGo, that belongs into an area of AI we call reactive machines. If you have said yes to a movie that Netflix had suggested to you, sat in a self-driving car before, use any sort of autocorrect or spam filter, that's a type of AI that's a bit more intelligent and has limited memory, which is why we call it limited memory. We are not here yet, but the world is starting to explore theory of mind as the AI systems that we use get smarter and smarter. And they will be embodied in AI systems like Siri or Alexa or any of the social robots that we have. I heard a lot of parents are on the call. If your teenagers or teenage kids are on apps such as Replica or Character AI, then both of these apps have been extremely popular amongst teenagers, where they're chatting with a virtual girlfriend or a virtual boyfriend or a virtual friend of some sort. This is just going to become increasingly more and more popular. And we are, as a world, starting to explore this field of theory of mind. And finally, the self-aware type of AI system is most likely a type of AI system that's very, very far away from us. And it's embodied by the movie Her, if you've seen that movie before, or The Terminator. It's still a well far away. Why is this important as knowledge workers when, or as employees, where we're working in this space now, where it's very likely that there are robots and AI that work alongside us? It's this photo. It's if you've ever dialed into an automated phone tree and there's a sing-song robot voice that says dial 1 if you want to reach this department, and dial 2 if you want to reach this department. And then all you want to do at the end of that call is yell representative over the phone, that frustration that you have. In that situation, you're a customer, but sometimes you have that same frustration if you were a worker interacting with some sort of AI agent in your work. It's the same frustration. It's where we know that the AI system on the other side can't hear our voice, an agitated voice, can't adapt to our specific problem. And that is the main difference of what we call narrow and general AI. And I think as knowledge workers or as speakers, even, when we know what AI is really good at, which is that type of narrow intelligence, and that's the technology that's been out and released today. And if we know that humans are really good at what we call general intelligence, which is a type of intelligence that requires us to adapt to new situations, this is when we can make our mark and difference as a knowledge worker or even ourselves as a speaker. So narrow AI will dedicate itself to specific tasks, whereas general AI can take the knowledge it's learned from one domain and apply it to another. And super AI, once again, is very far away. Although a lot of companies these days have pivoted their mission to achieving super AI. I think at the moment, as long as we wrap our heads around what narrow and general AI is, we would be pretty well served as workers in our current economy. So here's a hierarchy of AI capabilities, and we have evolved since November 2022 from interacting with chatbots and the numerous LLM tools that are out in the space. I've circled the main three, which is probably the main three types of LLMs that we will continue to look at, although the last one of DeepSeek is of greater and greater importance, especially of what had happened into what the changes it caused in our stock market. Basically, DeepSeek understood that we didn't need billions of dollars to train these models because it only had a budget of around 6 million. And it was able to create a system that rivaled in reasoning capability to something like ChatGPT or Claude. In 2024, we saw reasoners come into play, where they have a human level ability of problem solving. In 2025, we're seeing a lot of agents come online. So a lot of different companies are also involving the work of different agents as well. The OpenAI CEO, so this is Sam Altman, he predicts that AI will make it possible for one person to build a $1 billion company someday. Some people believe this is true. Some people think this is still ridiculous. I personally know that it is definitely possible for one person to build a couple $1 million company through the use of agents, and we've seen a lot of those cases today. And a couple months before, we saw the first job listing for an AI agent. So this is a job listing from YC. YC is Y Combinator from it's a tech incubator from San Francisco, where they're hiring AI agents for about $10,000 and a year. And the thing with employing agents in your work is it doesn't complain. It will run 24/7. It doesn't really take sick leave or sick breaks. And that is and it is very helpful, especially in the speaking business when we are on the road all the time. We're dealing with different time zones. Sometimes there are clients that come to us on an Asian time zone, and sometimes we are not there and available to reply back to them. And that's where agents can become very useful for us too. Level 4 is where we'll see innovators, where AI will aid in invention with us. We've already seen this happen a lot with scientists using AI to look at protein structures to develop new types of drugs. And the final level is when AI can do work of whole organizations. And both the latter two tiers of this pyramid has question marks because we don't know when that type of AI system will be here. But what we know is the bottom two, reasoners and chatbots, are definitely with us. And so this might help you also as a speaker, that generative AI is often used for 6 key tasks. As speakers, we summarize sometimes a lot of information because we do a lot of research ourselves. Sometimes we want to look at a certain data point, maybe it's a feedback in the sessions in a previous session that we've done. Sometimes we want to transform whether it's a PowerPoint, whether it's a social media asset. Sometimes we want to augment our assets. So if there is for instance, newsletter that we're writing, a certain paragraph that we have, we don't quite know how to finish it, you can ask AI to augment it for you. In the chatbot space, anyone really that runs a website of some sort converses with customers online. And sometimes we're not always there to answer that question. And so you see a lot of websites implementing chatbots. That's the use of what we call Q&A dialogue, so that there is some sort of virtual assistant to answer a question if you're not there. And then in the world of net new creation, because whether you're in sales, in marketing, in the operations space, or any type of space when you're needing some sort of content, you're creating net new information. Something to note about general AI is it is improving at an impeccable pace. So 2 years ago, we asked AI to give us a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and this was something that resulted. And you might say it's definitely unusable because he looks a little demonic. In May 2024, though, AI was able to give us something like this, where there were no directors involved in creating this footage, or actresses, or even shot in Tokyo. It was created via a prompt. And by the end of 2024, AI was to give us a whole music video and a series of ads. So now a lot of these companies are creating an entire commercial using AI. And we used to think that, people in the creative field, that we would reject AI, and that's certainly come up in Hollywood, for instance, where there's a lot of writers who are rejecting the use of AI. But for the most part, even when you are in a creative field, the trend is more, how do we use it to our advantage, and how do we make our work more efficient? I have about 10 seconds left, John. So I'm going to skip a lot of these tools that I have used personally and go to maybe this last slide, where if we're going to be replaced, because that's it's a point of concern for a lot of people. Is this our future org chart? I would say no. What I encourage people to do is look at your role and try to chop it up in a series of tasks to lump together things that are very repetitive and then to concentrate more on the things that are more creative. And it exists for speakers, for us as well. Speaking is a very creative field, also. We have to use our general intelligence. I think the speaking field is a field where you have to use a lot of general intelligence instead of narrow intelligence in looking at the audience, taking your experiences in the past, and how do you wheel together valuable information where you can teach the audience something or bring something of value. And so in this space, there's a lot of room for us to use AI as well. Because there's also a lot of parts of our roles that are very narrow, and there's a lot of repetitive things that we can outsource to AI. Um, but a lot of other things that we will need are human general intelligence, where we have to tap into our intuition to answer to. And with that, I'll give it back to John for questions.
Outstanding.
Thanks so much.
Let's give it up for Sharon. All right. Again, if you want to give feedback, Sharon, you can take your phone, scan the QR code, or if you're here in the chat, you can click the link and give a little information about what you thought. You know, one, I thought there was Kathleen already chatted. I didn't know that commercial was done with AI, so I thought that was key. Here's my first question for you. I didn't install DeepSeek. Did you, and why?
I had to do my homework as somebody in this space. DeepSeek is also from a city in China called Hangzhou, where I used to live. And my network sort of knows that founder. So just from osmosis and just being on WeChat as a communications app, I caught wind of DeepSeek because it launched in China a lot sooner than when it came to the US. And so yes, I even in its earlier versions, I had it downloaded, or at least not downloaded, but I've visited the web app and I have played with it. My honest opinion, and I had that slide up with the popular AI tools, ChatGPT is still the winner. As somebody who has tested multiple tools over the course of the past 3 years, I'm a paid user of ChatGPT though, in its highest tier. So I think that makes a difference because I think a lot of us, when we look at these tools, we're sort of just testing it out and we're looking at the free tier only. And the free tier is usually the oldest model.
Right.
They're not going to give you the best model if you're just a free customer. And I think that's sometimes the frustration that we have when it comes to AI is that we're sort of prompting a couple of things. The thing it spits back out at us is very generic sounding. There's not many insights there. So we kind of just turn the page and focus on other things. I think that's the mistake that a lot of people have made also. But I'm only saying that from my own perspective because I became that paid customer. So DeepSeek is out there. It is pretty good. So if you are comparing the latest model of DeepSeek versus the free tier of ChatGPT, you might notice that they're on par to each other. But if you're the paid customer of ChatGPT, it will get better.
Oh, that's good to know. I've told people that, again, if you are investigating this, which is get the paid account and then open it up and try and do things all through the week, that is experimenting and learning is how you can stay current with that. You know, I saw this part on agents. I'm very interested in that. What are one or two of the top agents that you suggest that people should check out?
I encourage people to check out something called N8N, where you can build your own agent. So you can build your own agentic workflow. I think what a lot of tech companies are doing right now, and I just came out of NRF, which is this big retail show in New York. There were a ton of service providers calling themselves agents. Because I come from the e-commerce, the retail space, a lot of there's AI agent product detail page creators, there's agent marketers, there's agent designers. I think it's largely used as a marketing word right now. It's not truly agentic. In my larger, fuller keynote, I go through what is the difference between just a regular chatbot versus an actual agent, and the latter is that it has a feedback loop and an agentic workflow. That's what makes it an agent, because it can reiterate and learn from its mistakes. So yeah, there's that big difference. But N8N is the company to check out there.
All right. Well, Chris has the speed question. Is the Chat GPT Pro account worth the 10x cost of the Plus account?
No.
Okay, good. And if you want, Jay, you
I've
can
been
chat
there
with,
for you, Chris.
you can chat
I've
with
been
Chris
there.
in the chat box. Chris says love the brevity. All right,
Yeah.
excellent. Let's give one more round of applause to Sharon, Guy. Thank you so much for that beautiful talk on AI. And I try and keep current, and I definitely learned something here. Okay, coming up next, we got our next speaker coming in. All right, in this talk, you're going to understand what honor is. Honor. And it's important in our lives. We're going to develop an atmosphere of honor in our lives, and let's see how we can apply honor to particular environments. Please put your hand together for Dr. Let's see, hold on. Dr. Jerry W. Wood. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Jerry. Bring him in now. Hello, Jerry. How are you doing?
Thank you, John. Good being with you.
Thank you. So glad you could be here today. Are you ready for today's presentation?
I am. Thank you, everyone, for joining as well. I've been asked
Have any slides? Sorry, Jerry, you have any slides, or you're just going to chat with us?
Just chat with you today.
Perfect. All right. The stage is yours, and I'll start the clock.
Great. Thank you. Well, I've been asked to explore with you honor in the home and the workplace. And I think the best place to start when looking at that is asking a question. What kind of culture do you and I create every day in the workplace, in our family, in our community? Culture is really like the background noise of life. It's always there. It's shaping who we are and what we become. Sometimes it's loud and in our face, like those awkward TV ads that you and I see that makes us want to change the channel when watching with grandma in the room. But most of the time, culture is really subtle. It's almost like you down here in South Florida, I would equate it to laying on the beach with the gentle sounds of waves in the background when you're trying to get a nap. And yet, culture, whether it's obvious or subtle, it really has a profound impact on all of us. Culture is like the background noise of life. It's always there. It's always shaping who we are and what we become. Sometimes it's loud and in our face, like those ads that I mentioned, and sometimes it's just all around us, and it has a profound effect and impact on us. And today, just for a brief few moments, I want to talk about the concept that has the power to transform your business, your leadership, and your relationships. And today, I want to talk about the idea of that culture of honor. Every workplace, every family, every organization has a culture. It's the unspoken set of values and behaviors that shape the way people interact. Every workplace, every place we go has that culture going on. For years, society has swung between two extremes, the rigid monocultures where one way of thinking dominated, and the open multicultural, where everything is tolerated simply because it's different. But the real call, especially for leaders, isn't just to accept or tolerate culture. The real call, especially for leaders, is to create culture. The best businesses, the strongest teams, the most thriving families are those that are intentional about culture. And that's where honor comes in. Honor isn't about hierarchy. It isn't about flattery. It's not about empty gestures. It's about recognizing the worth and the value of people and treating them accordingly. Let me share with you a powerful story about a man you may have heard of whose life was transformed, and he transformed the lives of others through honor. The story goes of St. Francis of Assisi, who grew up in wealth and privilege. He had everything the world told him he needed. He had status, he had money, He had opportunity, but deep inside, he was restless. Something was missing. And the story goes that one day while riding near Assisi, Francis encountered a leper. Now, in those days, you need to know, and in that culture, lepers were the lowest of the low. They were shunned, they were rejected and avoided at all cost. And Francis, like most people, had always feared and despised lepers. But in that moment, something changed. The story says, as it progresses, that he got off his horse, he walked up to the leper and did something that was totally, completely unthinkable. He leaned over and kissed the leper on the forehead. He honored the man's humanity when everyone else saw his disease. That single act transformed Francis's life, and he began to serve the very people that he had once shunned, dedicating himself from that moment forward to a life of humility and honor. And in doing so, he sparked a movement that has now changed history. That single act transformed Francis's life. He began to serve the very people he once shunned. And in doing so, like I said, he changed history. Now, taking that story, what if in our business, in our relationships, we chose to live with that same intentionality? What if we saw the humanity in every person we encounter, our employees, our colleagues, even the ones that we disagree with? What if we begin to look at them differently? In a corporate setting, honor isn't about giving out the employee of the month certificates or a year-in bonus. Those are the minimum standards. But honor is about, in a corporate setting, it's about creating a culture where people feel valued, respected, and empowered to bring their best forward, creating that culture around them and in them that will that with that intentionality will change your atmosphere in the business. Let me have you consider a few questions. When was the last time your company truly honored its employees? Not just rewarded performance, but recognized their inherent worth. Another question, how does your workplace culture reflect honor in daily interactions? And one more question. Do people where you work, people even maybe in your home, do they feel more like cogs in a machine, or do they feel seen, heard, and appreciated? A culture of honor really breeds a loyalty, a productivity, a creativity, and a trust. It fosters environments where people want to stay and contribute their best. And the best part of this culture of honor is it simply starts with an intentional action. So how do we shift culture? How do we shift the culture around us? Well, here's 4 steps I think that every leader, very simple, every leader, coach, and professional can implement. Number 1, and it's an easy one, but sometimes it's overlooked. Discover the individual uniqueness. Do you realize everyone has a unique personality and a temperament? And honor begins by recognizing and appreciating those differences rather than trying to force conformity. Number 2, clarify your core values. What, as a leader, truly drives you? What core values define your business or your leadership style? When you honor values, you create alignment and purpose. A third thing to consider is empowering dreams. I think some of the best leaders that I've ever followed, they don't just see what somebody is today. They see what they could be tomorrow. They encourage growth, development, and the pursuit of purpose. And here's the last one, and I think it's probably the most overlooked, is to emphasize legacy. Do you realize honor is more than just about the present? It's about what we leave behind, the story that we write with our lives, our businesses, our relationships, and even our families. And so the challenge that is before us is that we need to recognize each of us is a living story. But you're living your story one day at a time. And it's just that culture, that story, that corporate place that is being created every single day that you're honoring those that are around you. That's a leadership principle that has the power to reshape businesses, strengthen teams, and transform lives. In fact, I believe that creating a culture of honor isn't just an option, it's really a responsibility. And here's the best part. It starts with you, starts with me. I think if you were ever interested in diving deeper into this topic, learning how to implement these principles in your leadership and in your workplace or your personal life, I'd love to connect with you. Whether it's through coaching or workshops or future talks, be fun to explore with you what we can create of a culture of honor together. And I'd love to get together with you. But let me leave you with a final thought. Just like St. Francis had his transformation when he honored someone that society rejected, you and I have the opportunity to change the culture around us, one intentional act at a time, one intentional act of honor at a time. So the question that we have before us here today, the challenge that we have, is what kind of culture are you creating? Thank you for letting me share this today.
Excellent. Let's give it up for Dr. Jerry David. Thank you, Doctor. We get a chance to give you some feedback here, so I'm going to share a screen and ask you a few questions while we got a little bit of extra time to share here together. Outstanding. Hey, Dr. Jerry, where did this concept of honor begin for you?
You know, I'm a former pastor. And I see so many people that came through my life as part of that church and all that with all sorts of unique personalities and giftings. And if you make them feel valuable, that's the honor component. That was part of it. I think the other part, though, John, was the fact that I think that's how my parents raised me, was to honor my brothers and my siblings. Honor developed in the home, but then once it's developed there, it emanates out. I think the thing that drives me to keep talking about this and seeing it is everywhere I go, and I travel a lot overseas and all, even from the flight attendants on the flight or whatever, they respond so much better when they're honored for their uniqueness and where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And your experience can get better. You know, what's the best example of honor that you've seen?
Wow. I think I've seen all sorts. I had in my congregation, though, a lady that lived to be 107 years old, if you can imagine.
Wow, that's cool.
And I watched as a lot of times older folks tend to get more rigid and more unbendable, if you would. But I watched even when our young people or our youth would do maybe a different style of music in the church that I know she didn't even understand. She still had an ability to honor their talent and their giftings and honor the fact that they were participating and being there. And for a young person to receive that kind of accolade from somebody that age and that wise, change those young people's lives. That's the atmosphere. That's the culture of honor.
Genius. Thank you, Dr. Jerry. You know, I do a lot of work with the Georgia Healthcare Association, and one cool thing they do is that they celebrate one of their patients every single year, and they do something big, like they have a partnership with the Atlanta Braves, and they get this resident a suite, right, at the Atlanta Braves. So something to check out. I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
Where'd you get your teapots?
Oh, on the back. I thought that was blurred out. That's my wife's collection. I'll leave it at that.
Are you a big tea drinking family?
No, I'm a coffee man, totally and completely.
Well, from Seattle, our greetings come to you, on
Yes,
the coffee
yes.
realm, Jerry. Excellent. Dr. Jerry David, thank you so much for sharing your message today. We appreciate
John,
you.
good being with you guys.
Outstanding. All right, let's see. Now we have our next speaker coming up, and make sure that our next speaker has a camera on. Let's see if I got my intro here. Coming up right after here, after Dr. Jerry David. Okay. Let me make sure I got the right piece. Okay, coming up next. Oh, and let me make sure and do this. I got to make sure, give some special powers and abilities to our beautiful speakers here. Okay, this speaker will be sharing how witnessing the rise of anti-Asian racism during the COVID-19 pandemic inspired her to create vibrant, uplifting stories centered around Asian characters. Over the years, she has written across various genres and for different age groups, but all of her books focus on Asian women and girls forging their own paths in traditionally male-dominated spaces. At the heart of her work is a deep commitment to authentic media representation for marginalized communities. Please, let's welcome to the stage, Kyla Zhao. Kyla, welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I apologize in advance if there are any audio or visual issues. I feel like my screen is lagging. I've just been struggling with computer issues all day.
Well, no problem at all. We'll find a way to make it work here, Kyla. So thank you for
Okay.
letting me know. And I'll always be here for you to help you out. Do you want to try and share a screen and just see if that part will
Yeah,
work
I'll
for
do
you?
that.
Where are you calling in from, Kyla?
California, Northern California,
Oh, what city? My hometown is Stockton, California.
San Jose.
Oh,
I
yeah, San
don't think
Jose,
I
one of
have
my good
sharing
friends.
powers.
Let's see. You should. Oh, I know mine is blocking your way. Okay, let me clear the runway for you. I'll try again, Kyla.
Okay.
So fun fact, here in the studio, I am actually producing today from Orlando. Normally my hometown is Seattle, Washington. And so I have one or two less pieces of equipment than I normally do. All
Are
right,
you
let's
guys
see,
able
Kyla.
to see my slides?
Yeah, I see it started to share. I'm waiting for an image. I'll tell you when it shows up on my side. There
Okay.
you go, writing the story you want to tell. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, and if at any point I'm going like faster than my slides are moving because of a lag in the visuals, just let me know and then I can pause and collect myself.
Perfect. All right, the stage is yours. I'll start the clock now. Here we go, Kyla Zhao.
Thank you. I think John did a fantastic job of introducing me and introducing the pillars behind my writing, but I'm also just going to tell you a little bit more about how witnessing anti-Asian racism inspired me to start writing. And I now have 3 published books, and I'm publishing another book next year. I was born and grew up in Singapore, and then I moved to the Bay Area to attend Stanford University. Graduated almost 4 years ago with degrees in communications and psychology, and I used to work in fashion. I was a fashion journalist for publications like Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, so on. I hope my audio is still okay.
Everything's perfect, Kyla. Keep on going.
Okay. But now life looks a little bit different. I work in product management at a tech company in Silicon Valley. And then on the side, I write novels about women and girls of color, Asian women and girls, who challenge gender stereotypes in traditionally male-dominated spaces. And I've been fortunate that my books have been recognized by some of the biggest publications and TV channels. And even though they're not the purpose behind my writing, it is in a way validating to realize that people do enjoy my stories and that there is an audience out there for books about Asian girls and Asian women. And the story of how I got started in writing can be traced all the way back to spring 2020. At that time, I was a third-year student at Stanford University. That's a photo of me and my college friends in front of our dorm. But as I'm sure you can all remember, that was also a time when the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the world and just drastically changed life as we knew it. So suddenly, my school was shutting down, and all of us had to go back home to spend the rest of the school year with our families. But that was also a time when every country was closing its borders. And so I was afraid that if I left the United States and returned home to my family in Singapore, I might not be allowed back for school or for internships and so on. That was still the time when we were optimistic that COVID was only going to be a few months. So I decided to stay put in California, and I ended up spending most of 2020 living alone by myself in a small studio in San Jose, Northern California. And that was also the summer when, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and parallel to the pandemic, I witnessed a strong wave of rising anti-Asian racism. I would go on Twitter and I would see photos of elderly Asians being the victims of hate crimes. And that was really hard to see because it made me think of my own parents and grandparents. Or I would turn on the TV and I would see, men in power at that time saying really hateful things about the Asian community. At that time, I was studying for my master's degree in communications, specializing in media studies. But that summer was the first time when I truly, truly comprehended this immense power that the media has in shaping perspectives, perpetuating stereotypes. And so, because of this, I started reflecting more on the media that I used to consume, that I personally consume for fun. So growing up, these are some of my favorite books. And if you were to just look at it, they are all very, very white centric. There's not a single Asian girl on the book covers. And so that actually influenced me to develop a very Eurocentric idea of beauty. I thought that only a blonde haired girl with blue eyes could be the main character, and Asian characters like myself would have to be on the sidelines playing some sort of supporting character. And it's funny because I was reading back on some of the short stories I used to write when I was younger, and all of my short stories would star a white girl with blonde hair, which doesn't even make sense because I grew up in Singapore where there's very few blonde people. But yes, somehow that was just what I internalized. And this is a screenshot from my favorite TV show, Gossip Girl. And you would notice that there's one Asian girl in the photo, but there she's very clearly on the sidelines and portrayed to be one level below the rest. So that was how I saw myself. That was how I saw the Asian women and girls around me. I thought we could only be on the sidelines and we could only play supporting characters. But during the pandemic, that got me to start rethinking that. How is it that the media has managed to influence me to develop such a Eurocentric perspective, to believe that I am not capable or that I don't deserve to be the main character? And so in fall that year, I had a lot of thoughts and emotions churning within me, but I had no one to tell them to because I was living alone. And so I had to channel everything into a more healthy outlet before I go crazy. So that was when I started writing in June that year. And it started off being a very, very casual project. I never thought about getting published, never imagined that it would be possible for a non-American to be published in America. So I was writing the story purely for myself, purely as an escape from the very hateful world that we were witnessing at that time. And then I somehow managed to complete a first draft of the book. And during the writing process, I made friends with some other writers, and some of them were trying to get published. And that's when I learned more about the publishing process. And I realized that it is possible for people like myself. And so, for those who don't know, if you want to be published by one of the big traditional publishing houses, mine's Penguin Random House, you have to first get a literary agent. I think this is pretty common across all creative industries. Singers, actors, models, they all have agents, and so do authors. So in April of the following year, I got my literary agent. I basically just cold emailed my manuscript out to a bunch of agencies and hope that one of them will like my work enough to sign me as a client. Agents don't make money until you start making money. So they also want to pick a story and an author that they believe will sell well. And so I think that was around the time I graduated. And then 1 month later, I sold my book at auction to Penguin Random House. And I remember that this was one day before my birthday. So it felt like this most amazing birthday gift. And at auction just means that there are several publishers who are interested in acquiring the book. And so they basically just send in their offers to my agent, and then she goes back and forth with them. It sounds really exciting, but it's just a lot of emails. And then almost 2 years later, my first book came out worldwide. So this is my first book, The Fraud Squad. It is set in Singapore, high society. I really wanted to write a story set in my hometown because I was very homesick at that time, and I didn't know when I would get to go back to Singapore again. And so writing about it, writing a story and characters set in my home country was very comforting to me. But then now I live in Silicon Valley in the Bay Area, and my second book reflects that. It takes place in the startup scene in Silicon Valley. And then my third book, which came out not super long ago, is for a slightly younger audience this time, and it's about a chess player. So think of it as a family-friendly version of The Queen's Gambit. And then I have another book coming out next year, which I cannot really share any details of yet because the book is not even complete. I write across different genres and for different age groups. As you can see, I have 2 adult contemporary books, 1 middle grade book, and 1 young adult historical fiction. But even though the genres and the age groups might differ, the one commonality running through all of them is that my main characters are always Asian. They are but I don't want to write a book centered on the idea that they are Asian. It just so happens that they happen to be Asian, but they are fully fleshed out characters with different hopes and dreams and fears, and their ethnicity is really just one part of that. Yeah, so I no longer want to see an Asian girl like myself sitting on the sidelines. I hope that, with more books coming out, written by Asian authors and starring Asian characters, hopefully a young girl or young boy reading the book will feel seen and represented. Um, okay, yeah, okay, so just I think I kind of covered this already, so I'm gonna skip on. A question that I often get is, you work in tech and you also write books, like they seem so different from each other. How do you balance them? And the truth is that my 2 jobs really aren't so different after all, and I'm happy to elaborate more on that if anyone has questions. They might seem very different on the surface, but the skills I pick up from one is very transferable to the other. So I'm just going to give you an example. In my job, because I do product management, I'm often receiving very technical input from the engineers and those who are actually building the product. But then my job is to convey all of this information to the executives who don't have the technical knowledge. And so I have to find a way to convey it in very understandable terms without, actually leaving out important details. And that is really just a form of storytelling. You want to tell them, okay, yes, like this GPU is running like 10% faster, but that doesn't mean anything. I have to tell the executives like, so what? Like it runs 10% faster, but what does it mean? And so that's storytelling. I have to come up with a hook, a good structure for the presentation, a good flow, and ultimately a takeaway message. And I just want to give this example of the Amazon 6-pager to show that I'm not the only one who thinks that being an effective writer can help you in your corporate jobs. The Amazon 6-pager method was created by Jeff Bezos in 2004. He strongly disliked people using PowerPoints because he believes that the bullet points can cover up sloppy thinking. And so what happens is that at the start of every meeting at Amazon, the person leading the meeting will distribute a 6-page memo that forces the author to clarify their own thinking as they are working through the 6 pages. And it also gets everyone on the same page so that you get to the final outcome faster and more efficiently. I also want to share another commonality that I've noticed between my 2 jobs, and it's actually a little bit sad. So in Silicon Valley, we have a few very well-known female tech executives, and they are rightfully celebrated for all that they have accomplished. But because it's always the same few names being praised and thrown out, it inadvertently creates the impression that there's only room for a few women to succeed at the very top. And it's the same thing in publishing. Um, Even though I think the landscape has improved quite significantly from just a few years ago, there are more opportunities given to Asian authors, but the truth is that it's still so dominated by white authors. So this is something that quite a few of my Asian writing friends have heard. They would go to a publisher, the publisher would love their book, but then they would say, oh, we can't buy it because we are already publishing a book by an Asian author. Or they might say, we already have an Asian author, so there's no room for another one on our roster. And another thing that authors of color or authors from marginalized communities often hear is, can you make the story more tragic? Because the books that the white publishers are used to seeing from Asian writers are those about intergenerational trauma. And I think those stories are very important. I grew up reading those stories, but at the same time, we are not just going to be having stories that are tragic and that are sad. Like I said earlier, I think we are so vibrant. We all like different things. We represent different things. Our ethnicity is just one common feature, but it is hardly the end all be all of our identity. And our stories are supposed to share that. Yeah. And so ultimately, a rising tide lifts all boats. I think it is tempting to start viewing other Asian authors as a competition when there are so few opportunities, but don't fall into that trap because we are actually letting the real people in power get away with too much. If we're able to help your fellow Asian writer or anyone else in your industry, please do so. I don't know if I have time to quickly go through my books. John, let me know.
You got 1 minute left.
Okay, 1 minute, cool. So Valley Verified, it's about a fashion journalist who's forced to quit her job and move to Silicon Valley to take on a new role at a tech startup. And she faces against tech bros, tech billionaires, and judgmental co-workers. She's basically a fish out of water, and she has to adapt very quickly to this very cutthroat environment. And then my book that just came out, family-friendly version of The Queen's Gambit, but you don't need to know anything about chess to enjoy it. And it's about exploring the pressure to succeed and performance anxiety through the eyes of a chess prodigy. And then my very first book that got me started in writing, it's actually really funny to look back on it now because I feel like my writing has just grown so much since then. It's set in Singapore high society, and it's about an ordinary working class woman who pretends to be a socialite to get her dream job. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the end of it. Those are my 3 books. This is where they are available. Da-dee-da-dee-da. And then, yes, please feel free to stay in touch or reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thanks.
Outstanding. Let's give Kyla a round of applause. Thank you so much for that. And sharing, again, I think some work that many people didn't know. I think it's very exciting to see something that comes out. I know there was a lot of things I think that were in this area. So you're blazing some trail. I want to share with you, Kyla, in Seattle. Well, number one is if you want to give Kyla some feedback, you can either take your phone and scan the QR code, or you can click the link that's inside the chat here on Zoom. And if you want to find out more from her, that's one of the ways to contact her. Now, Kyla, I don't know if you knew this. There is a store in Seattle that is a all Asian Pacific Islander author bookstore. Have you heard of this bookstore yet?
No, not in Seattle. I know there's one in New York, and I've visited that one before, but yeah, not a one in Seattle. I've not even been to Seattle. So.
We got to get your books inside of the one in Seattle, and hopefully we can get you arranged for a visit. I got a couple questions for you. You know, what do you think is one of your hidden impacts for your books being published?
One of my hidden impacts?
Yeah, like a benefit or an impact to like the audiences that get a chance to read your book.
Yeah, well, I think for the readers, you will just realize that Asian characters could be the stars in a wide variety of scenarios, that we don't have to be pigeonholed, that we don't have to be turned into a stereotype or a caricature. And then I also hope that maybe it inspires younger authors to believe that they can write and publish books. I think that, we should hear all voices from all generations, and we could benefit from hearing some younger voices as well.
I agree too, Kyla, and I don't know if you knew, I'm a two-time author for technical books, so that's what I've gotten a chance to put out in the world. What's one of your favorite writing rituals?
Oh my gosh, this is really weird, but hear me out. So when I'm writing the first draft, I know that if I were to like see a sentence as I'm writing, I would feel so tempted to just go back and edit it to make it like perfect. And then I'll just keep thinking and thinking about it, and it would drive me crazy. So now when I'm writing the first draft, I write in font size 7 so that I cannot see what I'm writing. And so that way I'm forced to just continue writing and finish my first draft before I go back and look at everything.
Oh, genius trick. It's kind of like turning off your self view, like on Zoom, so
Yeah,
you won't edit yourself while you're writing. I've
yeah.
never seen that technique. That's a great technique. And then, Kyla, what would you like to say to anyone who feels like they have a book within them? There's lots of people who think they want to write a book, but you took the step and actually have written a book. What would you like to say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing magical that made me take that first step. It was just that I wanted to start, and you're always going to find a reason why now is not the best time to start. Like maybe you're going to school or you're starting a new job, da di da di da. But yeah, I mean, if this is a dream, then you will make time and you will prioritize this in some way.
Yeah, genius, Kyla. And for those who don't know, I failed 4 times over the course of 10 years before I wrote my first book. So I wish I was as young as you, Kyla, when I got it and actually followed through with it. So again, a lot of people in the chat, make sure and read the chats. A lot of people are supporting you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
again, very appreciate your success in this field. I'll be looking forward to your books. Thanks, Kyla.
Thanks very much.
Outstanding. All right. Cool. So we have another presentation coming up. Again, I hope you're enjoying the variety of different speakers that we have here, the experience that they have. Coming up next, right? APIs that other people of color are often rendered invisible in the workplace through external forces like racism and xenophobia. But we also face internal forces like guilt, shame, and self-criticism, and our cultures are sometimes erased as well through assimilation. That's the path I took in Stockton, and even outright ridicule. This creates all-encompassing toxic invisibility that permeates our entire lives, following us wherever we go. This speaker is going to combine healing, storytelling, and a radical new way of looking at culture to help everyone to be seen and heard in the workplace and beyond. Let's welcome our next speaker, Ryan Takamiya. Ryan. Hey, Ryan, how are you doing?
Hey, John. Thanks so much for that introduction.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you're going to share any slides or if you're going to just use your background.
I don't have any slides today. I'm just gonna talk. I'll just
Perfect.
use
All
the
right.
background, yeah.
The stage is yours, and I'll begin the timer whenever you're ready, Tyron.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And thanks everybody for attending and hanging out. My name is Ryan Takamiya. I'm an executive DEI consultant. I am trained in collective healing and restorative justice. And I'm just going to talk with you today. And the thing I'd like to talk to you about is this epidemic in the workplace that I believe is plaguing your Asian American and Pacific Islander workers and many other historically marginalized groups. And it's an epidemic that I call quote unquote toxic invisibility, which is a very new term for a very old problem. And it's a term that you haven't heard of. And I know you haven't heard of it because I coined it, and you haven't heard of me. So I know you haven't heard the term. But it refers to the exclusion that we Asian Americans feel at work, at home, in society, and even in our own minds. So it's 2025, right? We supposedly live in a post-racial America. You have a good job, you go to work, you keep your head down, you work hard. You don't believe that your company or your bosses or your coworkers could possibly be racist or think less of you because you're Asian. They may even take great steps to try and eliminate discrimination in the workplace. And yet, maybe you've been passed over while someone else who doesn't work as hard got promoted. Maybe you only get the minimum salary increase every year, despite keeping your head down and working diligently.